Busy day at work. I've been anxious, rushed, and stressed to the point of getting grayer hairs than the ones on my 2 cents avatar. Almost being anxious of whether or not I was actually going to make this on time. But yes, we are actually here on time, off of work. And man, do I have a show for you all.
Excellent.
Yeah. So anyway, what's up, everybody? It is the Dark Conservatarian, and I have a litany of guests here as we are going to be talking about political icons. Say hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hello.
Hola, señor.
Oh, God.
Is that cringier than my way of introducing 2 cents, or no?
Yes, just yes.
Hey, it's not my fault that my sister took Spanish and taught me how to, say words in Spanish, and then I picked up on Spanish.
Como se dice, never do that again.
Como se dice, go fuck yourself.
but anyway, so what we are going to be talking about today is an issue that kept on coming up like ever so subtly, is the reputation of certain political icons. People like Ben Shapiro, Jordan Peterson, Kyle Kulinski, like it comes up in conversation in our circles, group chats, randomly during live streams. And I thought, hey, why not it be interesting to like talk about the reputations of all these big time political icons, and even people like Sargon of Akkad and all sorts of them. And so how I think we'll just do this is that we'll let my 2 cents go first. Everybody introduce yourselves and tell us of who you consider to be political icons. It can be like locally, and it could be either nationally or internationally. I don't care. And like explain yourselves, your beliefs, and where you sit on the political spectrum. So anyway, my 2 cents.
All right. Hello, everybody. My name is My 2 Cents. I have a YouTube channel. I talk about economics, culture, smart living, and then some totally random stuff every now and then. I am a libertarian ANCAP. So economically speaking, I support for free markets and no governments, privatize everything. I guess that pretty much sums it up.
Sorry, that did not mean to be a scoff. Anyway, S-Man.
I'm S-Man Speaks. I talk about politics as well. I cover things like social issues, religion, whenever I find the motivation, among other things. I, like My 2 Cents, support free markets as well. I'm a minarchist as opposed to an ANCAP. And generally speaking, I find politics to be too fascinating to ignore. And I'm pretty excited to join this stream.
JJ?
Hello, this is the Crusader. I talk about football and politics and some social issues. I have my own news stream called Crusader News. And just like S-Man, I am a libertarian, and I am also a minarchist. So basically, I'm like S-Man. I think just a little more right-wing than he is.
Oh, ever so slightly.
Yeah.
And I, of course, am your host, the Dark Conservatarian, conservative, libertarian, Christian, political, ranting edgelord. And I talk about... S-Man, screw you. But yes. Lord. So anyway, some people who I consider to be political icons, for me personally, people like Rand Paul, Ben Shapiro for a few, and also used to consider like Steven Crowder to be somewhat of a political icon, but then the whole Potholer 54 drama happened, and I did not like how he handled that. And another person who comes to mind, who's kind of waning on me, but I still consider ever so slightly an icon, is like Ted Cruz, or at least for me personally. Yeah, I know, S-Man. And another thing that makes people cringe whenever I use the term political icon is that I've used that term on both Bering and Sargon. Like, I don't know. What do you guys think of that? Is it cringy that I consider that I've ever called them political icons in the least bit?
Sargon, I would say not really cringy. I mean, nowadays it's cringe beyond belief, but to be completely fair, I probably would have back in 2016 as well. Bering, to be completely honest, I wouldn't call him a political icon because the topics he would cover back in the day were just feminism and social justice, among those things, and that was kind of his bread and butter back in the day. And those are like very light politics compared to like other issues like economics, trade, foreign policy, etc. And he doesn't really touch any of those. He would and he touches other social issues today than he would back in 2016.
Right.
Mm.
Yeah, and you remember of when that I like called Bering a political icon, like in my response video to him, and then he just pretty much laughed.
He mocked it.
Like,
He mocked
I
it.
did not know exactly how to define that. I just said that what I expect out of my political icons is a certain amount of credibility to them, like political pundit, whatever you want to call them. But yeah, so there's like a list of other. I mean, oh man, enough to kind of.
If I could just ask quickly, when you say credibility, do you mean they know what they're talking about, or they actually agree with you in your political stances? Because I mean, I can certainly think of left-wing political icons that I think are complete morons, but are nonetheless the voice of that position.
I'm thinking credible, like truthful and just honest in what they're doing and what they're saying and so forth, consistent with their principles, etc.
So they believe what they're saying, that type of thing. Like if I was to advocate for like some type of policy, like I genuinely believe in that. No outside influence is making me say, put this policy into place. Like because that's kind of what I'm getting from what you're saying. But no, I entirely agree that credibility is a big factor in political icons. I think without credibility, then their word is just as worthless as the rest of society's, at least unless it comes to voting.
And
yeah,
the thing that I was saying about Bering, like my 2 cents most likely does not know about this. I mean, unless he actually watched that video of Bering's. But yeah. But the reason as to why that I was calling him, like saying that he was losing credibility, is that he was editing unintentionally. He explains that he unintentionally, but still, he edited another buddy of ours, Loudmouth Reviews, out of context. And that was just a strand of dishonesty that I thought from him. But that's a bit of drama that is resolved, but still, that would be like an example of, yes. And since we resolved that, that was like a good start to this year. We like just resolved some drama on a good note. Like,
yeah.
At the end of last year and the beginning of this year. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was going to ask. So for just everybody here, who was like the first political when you get into politics? Who was the first person you would have considered your icon at that time?
2 cents.
That is tough. If somebody else like knows the answer right away, go ahead. I'm gonna think about it quick.
I would say Rush Limbaugh, but I don't consider him any more of a political icon to me. I don't look up to the guy much. But this was like way back in my Christian conservative echo chamber days, like when I was very young and did not know how a person should talk when it comes to politics. But a good, solid role model that I think, a pretty early role model, I think, would be Mark Levin.
I think one of the few people I would have comfortably called a role model would have been, and this was during my time when I was a leftist, and this was fairly early into politics, would have been Barack Obama. Like, not today, considering like all I've learned about his administration and the actions that have happened. But to be completely
change your principles.
Yeah, my principles as well. One figure, and this dude's been long dead, but I've always kind of had a liking for Grover Cleveland. But Austin Peterson and Rand Paul, those types, I would consider them like current political icons for me. Gary Johnson would probably be in the bottom tier, like the absolute bottom tier. But I do agree with some of his principles, but of course not all. But I find would be a way better figure than like any of those like Marx or anything. Marx has never been an icon of mine, and if he ever does, then I'll probably have Alzheimer's by that time.
So would you say that you look at Gary Johnson the same way that I look at Ted Cruz nowadays? Of where you're
not the biggest fan.
Yeah, of where it's kind of waning. Your image of the guy is kind of waning.
Yeah, but Yeah, so like in terms of like political icons, like for me to consider someone a political icon, there's like it's not like this vigorous process. Like if they can be honest, they can be truthful, they can be credible, they stand for what they believe in, and the thing I like the most is just consistency. You know, like if they say this is like if they're an elected official and they're saying this is how it's going to be, and they're firm in it. To me, that's great. You know, so if you're the kind of guy who will say, "Read my lips, no new taxes," yet you raise taxes, or you just break something where it's like you said this, but you did the complete opposite. I can't really consider you much of an icon. I'm not going to think they're the worst leader ever or the worst icon ever, but I won't consider them a personal icon.
Yeah, I think, in my opinion, that it's easier to have like a political pundit or philosopher as an icon than a politician, honestly, because politicians, I would say, have a higher tendency to lie, be inconsistent and dishonest than political talk show hosts, campus speakers, and just pundits in general, and philosophers, you know.
Mm-hmm.
If I could chime in on that, I think politicians, especially, before they ever come into office, they're very firm in their convictions. Once they're elected, they discover that, there are other people with their hands in the game that have a lot more sway than they realized. And you'd have your constituents believe you're the one making all the decisions. I think anyone who's really studied what goes on in Washington realizes that's not how it works. And regardless of how committed to one's principles a particular politician tries to be, at the end of the day, they have donors, they have, civil service,
super
representatives,
PACs.
There are bankers, there are people with significant sway over what they do. And at the end of the day, they end up not being able to live up to their word. Perhaps not, perhaps because they go back on their word, but I would say, and at least I would wager that many of them end up having to make decisions because there's too much external influence on their decision making, so they end up not being able to live up to what they said they do, even if perhaps it was the case they genuinely thought they were going to go in and not be swayed by anybody.
Yeah, I was actually
very true.
Yeah. In fact, I was watching a debate for who's going to represent my district in Congress, and the incumbent is saying, Washington hasn't changed me, I've changed, and he makes some self-deprecating humor, but it's like, I find that hard to believe. Like, to me, in order for me to really, really trust a politician, like they'd have to show like this overwhelming amount of evidence of like that they have not been changed by Washington. I think that it's just something they say to get reelected. And one thing I don't like about some political icons sometimes is this overzealous anti-establishment theme. Like, I agree with the anti-establishment sentiment. I just think it's gotten to this point where it doesn't sound genuine anymore. Like, they just say it because they know that's what their constituents want to hear.
Right.
Very true.
I mean, I guess somewhat of an example. I mean, I don't think that Ted Cruz is the most establishmentarian as it gets, but he would be kind of an example of somebody who toes the line. Like, or no, he speaks the beliefs of anti-establishmentarianism, anti-establishment GOP, but then he's somewhat more establishment-esque with his beliefs, and plus there's I mean, it's not a donation, it's not a flat-out donation that he got from Goldman Sachs, but it was like still a loan, so there's still somewhat of a strand of establishment type of,
yeah, and
that.
Yeah, and his challenger Beto O'Rourke has made almost like $40 million, and he's not had to take any super PACs. Like, and the fact that the seat is this contested, it says a lot. You know, when Cruz should be in the polls like dominating over O'Rourke, it's like narrow majorities and sometimes pluralities. It's like that does say a lot when it's that contested in a state that Republican.
I think kind of what helped cause that was when he and Trump just started going back and forth on that issue, it's the cult of personality fights that happened during the 2016 election. I would think that caused to damage his reputation somewhat. Like some loyal Trump supporters are just feel kind of disenfranchised and turned off by Cruz. I mean, I lean more towards Ted Cruz than Donald Trump during that election, of course, but still, I mean, that's my understanding as to why he's not doing so well, is because Trump damaged him pretty effectively, reputationally. I mean,
I watched the debate between the first one. I need to see the other two. I don't know if the third one's been held yet, but something that really damaged Ted Cruz in my eyes, because for a while I was like, maybe I might like the guy. It was just some of the debating tactics were like rather dishonest or uncharitable. You know, it's like if you're trying to debate for public office or hold a debate in general, it's like going on these emotional tangents and smearing your opponent is like one thing they would recommend right off the bat you don't do. And in the in the year and a half I've been in live debates or public discussions, it's like that was something I knew as a rule of thumb, even before I was formally educated as to what fallacies are and how is the proper way to debate. I always knew making attacks on the opponent's character is about the worst thing you can do and the least professional. But, it's like, hey, you man, but it's like if you're going to smear your opponent, it's like on live TV and people can fact check that. It's like that's only going to hurt you more than it can help you.
Well, if I could say on that, I 100% agree. I think, unfortunately, the reality is in a population where the majority of people don't even know what a logical fallacy is, if the right people hear the character smear, and they're never going to go fact check it of their own accord. So yes, it'll hurt you amongst the intelligent people who actually fact check. But I think when it comes to one of the reasons I think the political process is so ineffective as it is that, a false story gets printed, and even if it gets refuted eventually, the fact that it got spread could be enough to stop someone from getting elected. I mean, just take, for example, the smearing of Brett Kavanaugh by sexual assault accusers. I think anyone who's actually studied the accusations at this point can see they were clearly false. But as he said, he's not going to be allowed to teach law anymore. It was brought up whether or not he'll ever be allowed to coach his daughter's sports teams again, because in the minds of many, the accusations are enough to take you down.
That's one of the more unfortunate things of society, of listen and believe. Like you could refute it like 1,000 times. And one time did the accusation have to pop up.
Yeah, but if it was your daughter on a team and there's like a coach who was like, well, even though I don't think he did it, do I really want my daughter on a team with a guy who supposedly led gangbangs? You're not worth the risk.
And by the way, 2 cents, just FYI, Humane Mind here is a fellow ANCAP. And yeah, he's been looking forward to this stream.
If I'm not mistaken, I've seen him in the comment section on some of my videos.
I believe so.
So I got a question, 2 cents. Would you you've been trying to think of some political icons in your mind. Like, would Ron Paul or Adam Kokesh or anyone like that be some people that come to mind?
I guess after I had a chance to think about it, I would say when I first started listening to political commentary when I was like in middle school every now and then as I got into high school more, the first people who got me listening to political commentary was like Rush Limbaugh and Glenn Beck. Now, that's not to say I agree with either of those people largely anymore, but those were some of the first shows I started listening to. Ron Paul, Adam Kokesh, I mean, certainly they've become the face of their particular breed of politics, if you were. I would say now we've got people like Stefan Molyneux, Lauren Southern, Black Pigeon Speaks. There are political icon can mean a lot of different things to different people, but I'd say, more or less someone who speaks out consistently from a particular perspective, and then the followers of that person generally come to adopt all their politics. That's kind of what a political icon is in my mind.
I mean, yeah, like the first people I started listening to when I got into politics, and this is going to be embarrassing for me, was to admit it was mostly CNN and the Young Turks. And by 2014 and 15, I just left the Young Turks. Yeah, I used to listen to them quite often. And
then you got into War Corp, somebody who helped change your beliefs.
Yeah, and then I was because then I was like, well, I want to make sure I'm getting this right, like the first time. I want to get it right the first time. So, I'd get other political issues. I'd listen to both sides, or even more than just the two sides, and try and find which one is the most correct, which one has the most evidence, the most nuanced, to ensure that it's the right decision. because it's kind of like if you publicly make a stance, it's like a bell you can't necessarily unring.
Yeah, and on the note of the Young Turks, like obviously I don't like the Young Turks, but I do make a point of every week trying to watch at least a few of the Young Turks videos just to make sure I understand what the other side is saying.
Are you sure it's not because you hate yourself? It's just to get the other side. It's
believe me, it is painful for me to do, but I try to, I don't want to be in my own echo chamber.
No, I completely agree.
I mean, what about Progressive Voice? I mean, I hear you like him very much.
Yes. Well, I take a look at his videos every now and then, see if he's got anything worth debunking.
Yeah.
But ever since his little call out of Dapperton and myself, we responded to that. He never responded. So,
Progressive Voice is a meme.
Yeah, the dude's a literal potato. Hell, I think I even made a meme of him.
I've heard of the guy since he was like down to 2,000 subscribers, and like the very first video that I ever seen him was a commentary on the Ted Cruz versus Bernie Sanders debate, and the guy was just utterly disgusting with his attitude and so forth.
Yeah.
Like, he just because somebody thought that Ted Cruz destroyed Bernie Sanders, you're a stupid fuck in that guy's eyes, and I'm thinking like, oh shit. Get into personal insults. That's soon.
And one thing I'll say, so in his video where someone called his show and asked him to respond to the video that I responded to him for. Right. Instead of responding to it, he made a video where he basically said ANCAPs are a total joke. They're so stupid, it's not even worth my time responding. Well, as I said in one of my videos, the very fact that you had to make a video to tell your viewers that we're so stupid, we're not worth responding to, shows me that you're not really sure how to respond to us. If you honestly thought we were so stupid, we weren't worth responding to, you would have ignored us entirely.
Yeah. It's just basically, he rides off of other people's arguments is all he does. I mean, has he ever even created one of his own arguments? I'm just wondering.
I think that in this case, like I've noticed with Progressive Voice, it went from going to politics to just political drama. Like he was covering this whole issue with Ann Coulter and who was his name that she did not debate. It was that one fuck you went after Dark Khan. What was his name? It's just not popping up. Kyle Kulinski, yes. Kyle Kulinski, yes.
That same person, right?
Ann Coulter turning down a debate with Kyle Kulinski. Did Kyle Kulinski actually challenge Ann?
I don't know. I thought she challenged him. Oh. I could be wrong, but I thought
it doesn't really matter at this point.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter who challenged who, but it's gonna be really funny if she challenged him and then she backs out.
I gotta like see the videos.
Yeah, I would think that he'd be the one to back out because he seems to be that kind of guy. He likes to throw punches and jabs at other people, but then when it comes to actually standing against them, standing against them one-on-one, he's not all for that.
One thing I at least respect about Cold of Ham, which basically, who is like, Kyle Kulinski is one of his heroes, but at least Cold of Ham, he fucking debates people. Kyle Kulinski is virtually spineless. I mean, he has somewhat he gained some ounce of respect from me when he decided to debate Razor Fist, but Razor Fist is not exactly the sharpest razor in the bathroom drawer. Just saying.
He definitely ain't Occam's razor.
Did they actually have a debate? I'd like to see that.
Yeah, it was earlier this year or last year. I know it was a while ago, but yeah, they debated over.
I think
it was on the drunk
it seemed like there was always some reason one of them couldn't do it, and I'm like, it's not worth it. But if they actually got around to actually having a debate,
it was
no, they did. Yeah. What Esmond said.
Yeah, it was on the Drunken Peasants. It was like a little over 2 hours. Yeah.
Yeah, so it wasn't on their respective channels, it was on the Drunken Peasants.
I mean, I thought you had heard about that debate earlier this year, Humane.
Not ringing a bell, but that'd be something I'd be interested in seeing, although the Drunken Peasants kind of makes me want to go to
Hey, yes, man. Who was that one guy that went after libertarians, calling us all stupid and all that sort of thing that you made a video response to?
It was this one channel. Let me see, because
Hassan Piker.
That was because I know I made a couple of response videos to the anti-libertarian people, and the funniest thing is they say that libertarians are dangerous. It's like, okay, 3% of the popular vote, dangerous, pick one. Like,
Yeah,
I mean,
either we're inconsequential or we're like dangerous, and like, wait, you can't have that. Both of those can't be true.
We're the boogeyman. Ooh.
I'm trying to find the other, because I know I made one later in 2018. This dude was like a massive douchebag. Okay.
Yeah, that guy. I could see him going up in a debate and then canceling it because he was such a pussy, just like Kyle Kulinski.
Yeah, the only anti-libertarian video that I honestly I could get where they were coming from, and I could somewhat agree with some of the criticisms, was roaming millennial. Although, to be completely honest, Donald Trump has made like probably worse gaffes, and so did Hillary Clinton in the issue of their respective campaigns.
Yeah,
definitely.
So she was more talking about the Libertarian Party as a whole, which has been in pretty much chaos for a while now. It's been kind of laughable. So a lot of, I don't know if you saw like during their basically their version of CPAC, but it's like their libertarian version. Dude went up on stage shirtless, and I think he was just in his underwear, and just like ran up on stage, and he was like, he wasn't a nobody in the crowd who was protesting or something like that. He was actually like, I forget where, he was somebody who was at least mildly associated with one of the groups that's at the Libertarian Convention. So it's not like he was some random convention goer. He was somebody who was actively involved in that and just stripped down and ran up on stage because the Libertarian Party's that laughable. It's just although one could probably make the point that roaming millennial, the Republican Party, has more faults than the Libertarian Party or something.
To answer Crusader's question, the video you're referencing came from Newsbroke. The video is called "The Religion of Libertarianism," and I'm pretty sure the ANCAPs would call it "The Religion of Statism." Their video. I think it was actually it was 2 Cents who I think had that title in this video, which I thought was pretty good. And Newsbroke seems like the type of progressive bullshit that one can find.
We're talking about political icons, right? Or like people.
Yeah, people that we look up to, and political role models and icons that we don't like so much.
Yeah, like an icon.
Talking about people like Milo Yiannopoulos, Sargon of Akkad, Kyle Kulinski, Cenk Uygur, even roaming millennial, Mark Levin. Steven Crowder, Ben Shapiro, I could like mention a whole litany of names.
3 hours later.
So, okay, so of the ones that you've mentioned, I know we're talking just about roaming millennials video, and as far as she seems to be one of the most consistent on a lot of things. And even though I disagree with her, like if she was talking about libertarians overall, I could understand the criticism. But I definitely see like, oh, well, that's the impression people outside of the community get, is they see the Libertarian parties, their campaign, like Gary Johnson. That's the mainstream's view of libertarians. And I've seen Tom Woods is actually becoming more of a participant in the Libertarian Party. Hopefully that changes the mainstream view of the Libertarian Party.
Yeah. But by the way, as Red Feather said in the chat, Roaming Millennial did change her name on YouTube to her actual name, Lauren Chen.
Yeah, she did. Did not expect her to do that. To even reveal her name, first of all. But I will say this with the Libertarian with the Libertarian Party itself. I mean, there are some there was some issues I was seeing them talk about in the presidential debate for the primaries, and it's like, this is going to be the issues you're campaigning on. Some of this stuff, it's like, this is what you're going to like campaign on. Like seriously, they're talking about driver's licenses and having those in general. It's like, that's not a big issue we got right now. I could name the issues that were the big issues of the day in that election. People being able to have whether or not they should be required to have driver's licenses was not one of them. It's like to campaign on the serious issues of the day and to show that, unlike the Democrats and unlike the Republicans, they could show themselves to be a unique party and to break away from these policies that have long been proven to fail. One person running for office in 2018, Larry Sharp, for the governorship of New York, I really like his candidacy because he's talking about the issues that affect New Yorkers, and he seems to be very committed to his principles. And I hope he at least beats the Republican, because if he can get second place, that'll be great. The only time I can imagine a Libertarian getting second place, or at least better than third, is Gary Johnson for the Senate race in New Mexico, but that will be a long shot.
Mm-hmm.
2 cents. If there's anything that you want to say, just go ahead and shoot.
Okay. I don't have anything else to add at the moment.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, and so you did mention Crowder, and so Crowder has been somebody that I've been following for a while, before he went daily and all of that sort of thing. And he's one of the few channels that I actually support financially still. I mean, there's, granted, 2 cents, you're on my list of, so once I sort things out, because I don't, with the whole financing thing, I have been devoting any of my extra cash towards financing my project, Funfair, and I don't know if you've been, I've been I did advertise that on, on Mr. Dapperton's channel for a bit.
I recall him saying something about that a while ago.
Yeah, so I'm the guy behind that particular project, and so I have reduced my patronage of a lot of people. I was doing, I think, over 400 a month to various different people, and I've dropped that down to under 100 and taken the extra cash and put that towards my project. But as soon as January rolls around, I'm going to change all that up. But Crowder's been somebody I've been financially supporting for a while, the Mug Club and all that sort of thing. And prior to him going daily, the daily thing was, yeah, I've seen a huge change in his content, but his character has remained the same. Although there's other people where maybe their cracks were there and I'm just now seeing them. But Ben Shapiro seems like one of those is like, wait, he doesn't seem to be as consistent now that he's gotten way more popular.
That was something I noticed with some of the icons, like, you know, some of the people that were like increasingly popular on YouTube. Is it felt like it was something that was short-lived. Like sometimes there may be people who they're still going strong and they're still, you know, they've become increasingly popular. Some of these people, like, there may be these small cracks that from far away you can't see it, and maybe even up close you can't see it. But now it's like, regardless of it being far away or up close, the cracks are just overwhelmingly wide open. And the number of problems are becoming increasingly lopsided for these people.
If I could ask Humane Mind quick, can you give me an example? I know a lot of different people who have issues with Ben Shapiro, but just for example, can you think of one major issue that you think he's been inconsistent?
The major issue, because he for some reason is against Roseanne Barr and is like is saying that she should have been fired for her claim. But then for some reason, he is all in support of James Gunn keeping his job when he was saying, like, the nature of those two. I was like, Ben seems to have that entire issue backwards. I'm a free speech absolutist. And so I'm like, okay, what happened to Roseanne Barr? I can kind of understand why she got fired. I think Disney overreacted. And actually, they started recently saying that some of their executives said, yeah, we may have overreacted on that. But the James Gunn situation, he was making explicit jokes, and you're like, I know you're joking, but when you are, I don't know if he was posing, or he's got images of them where he's got, I don't know if they are underage girls or they just look that way. Him posing with schoolgirls in images, and he's making like, and you're just like, okay, at some point it crosses the line from a joke to being, is he actually participating in this sort of stuff? And that's where I'm like, okay, so there's a random joke made by Roseanne Barr that cost her show, and then James Gunn has a history of making this sort of thing. It's not like a one-off type of thing.
I mean, it'd be one thing if he took a picture once, he was called out on it, and he realized, you know what, I made a bad decision in the moment. I'm not going to do that kind of stuff again. Whereas, no, this is something that happened over and over and over.
Yeah.
And
it's over and over, and it seems to be like, ooh, this guy actually, he's doing things that are pretty creepy considering he's around children's entertainment. I mean, granted, Guardians of the Galaxy appeals to all ages, but Disney is trying to keep a kid-friendly, self-image and that sort of thing. They actually go to great lengths to make sure that their actors don't appear as characters doing things that are raunchy and stuff like that. And that's huge rules for the people who dress up as Disney characters in the theme parks as well for that sort of stuff.
Hey guys, I have a little thing in the chat here. Sinister D Boy says in the chat, Ben Shapiro stated just a day or two ago that he doesn't think Roseanne should have been fired. By the way, I like the profile picture, Sinister, of Keanu Reeves as John Wick.
So he might have changed his stance on that. I know he was he's been tweeting about Roseanne Barr, and he was saying, yeah, she should have got fired because what she said was racist. And then at the almost in the same breath, he was defending James Gunn. I'm like, that seems backwards for someone who is for free speech and is for people not. As far as I'm concerned, you should either be in the situation where you're like, okay, Roseanne should have kept her job and James Gunn should have kept his job. That seems like a defensible position. But the position of James Gunn should keep his job and Roseanne should get fired, I'm just like, that just seems like a petty, like you just don't like Roseanne as opposed to being consistent on principle.
I want to mention like one thing about Ben Shapiro, though. One thing that I constantly see, particularly from alt-writers, but just people in general in the comment section of YouTube videos, is saying of how Ben Shapiro, he advocates for allowing diversity, racial diversity within European and North American countries. Yeah. But at the same time, for Israel, he's for a Jewish ethno-state, basically. Like, only Jews allowed in Israel. Like, it almost, any comments on that?
I will say with that, I think that is something he's inconsistent on. Now, to be fair, he does try to explain what he sees as a meaningful difference. He said, and I guess this may, someone like Ben Shapiro being an Orthodox Jew, I'm sure, his religious beliefs very heavily influence the way he looks at the situation. But he says Israel as a nation, and in his view, and obviously, this is something very hotly debated, but his position would be Jews have always lived in Israel. It's always been a Jewish state, and it was always founded on the principles of being a Jewish ethno-state. Therefore, no reason to change that now. America was not founded on the principles of being an ethno-state. We were founded on the idea of civic nationalism, and he sees that as the meaningful difference. Now, I'm not convinced it actually is a meaningful difference, but that's how he justifies it.
I could also see that as being, well, that is their country, and that's the way they've decided to run their country. So I'm not going to tell them how to run, how they should do things. But then again, he's also, that would be an inconsistent position for him to hold as well, because he's talking about how other people should run their country when he's talking about the EU and those countries like, oh yeah, this is what they should do. He's got an opinion on all of that. For some reason, like when you see Israel, you're like, well, Israel, are you guys doing this right? He should have an opinion that way, but that might be him siding more with his ethnic heritage than possibly his values.
Yeah, and anyone who's an Orthodox Jew believes that the sovereign state of Israel is put there by God, that land rightfully belongs to the Jewish people. So
well, even a large amount of Christians too. Just side note.
Yes.
Yeah. In fact, I noticed it's like one of the few issues the Democrats and the Republicans they agree they speak with one voice on Israel.
Mm-hmm. One thing that I have been noticing in recent months as well is that, generally speaking, it almost seems that people are learning to respect or even outright like Steven Crowder better than Ben Shapiro for some reason. I mean, whereas a year or two ago, people would have respected or liked Ben Shapiro better than Steven Crowder, but now the shoe seems to be on the other foot within this year.
Yeah.
One
of the big things. Noticing that? Yeah, one of the big things that I've seen is Owen Benjamin, which Owen Benjamin has been a frequent guest on Steven Crowder, and Owen Benjamin is calling, he says he still likes Ben Shapiro, but he's been, it seems like he's always got something on one of his streams where he's, saying, oh, here's something Ben Shapiro did that okay, you're doing this wrong, or you said something stupid again. And Owen Benjamin his crowd is exploding right now, and a lot of that, and so his crowd is merging, or at least I guess overlapping heavily with Crowder's crowd, as far as his fan bases and all that sort of thing goes.
Yeah,
I would say also it seemed to me with the whole fight between Alex Jones and Ben Shapiro, it seems to me people who are really fans of Alex Jones now absolutely hate Ben Shapiro because Alex Jones told them to hate Ben Shapiro. In the same way, Ben Shapiro, didn't say this exactly, but he said, he had very harsh words for Alex Jones. So now all the people who really love Ben Shapiro are condemning Alex Jones at every turn. So it is almost, a tribalism that everyone rallies around their favorite political commentator, and when their commentator says hate this political commentator, they do.
Well,
you guys ever
that's
heard of Living Colour's song "The Cult of Personality"?
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking of right now. It's an awesome song. I'll have to DM it to you, S-Man.
Sure.
Anyway, go on.
But I was just about to say that is another area where Ben Shapiro kind of like, dude, I still like him. I still like to hear what he has to say on a lot of things. But his comments concerning the whole Alex Jones being kicked off of every platform, it seemed like he was like, oh, well, that's what he deserves. And I'm like, really? You don't see this as the canary in the coal mine? You don't see this as like, okay, this is the first to go, right? And it's like that poem where they're talking about, well, when they came for the Jews, they said nothing. And when they came for the gays, I said nothing. And when they came for me, there was no one left to say anything for me. That's what I'm seeing right now. Is like, yeah, they started on the outskirts, right? They started off with the little, the alt-right personalities and things like that. And then they slowly, like, Lauren Southern is still pretty large or whatever, but they kicked her off of Patreon. I think she still has YouTube, but I think her Facebook was also suspended and things along those lines.
Well, I know she said she's not making YouTube videos per se anymore. She's dedicated herself wholly to her documentaries.
One thing that I don't really like about Lauren Southern is that she spouts some rhetoric that is like borderlining on alt-right rhetoric, needing a country to be like of one single race,
Yeah, that is stuff. Like I used to largely like Ben Shapiro and Lauren Southern, but when she started to get into that territory, I was like, I don't know, because there was this young YouTuber, Stell Bell. She seemed to be largely conservative. I knew she was a Trump supporter, but I generally liked what she had to say. And she started to talk about things like white nationalism, and she started to sound like she was supporting it. And I'm like, I'm not going to call her out or anything. I'm not going to start any drama. I'm just going to withdraw. I was never a patron of hers, but I just did not watch her stuff after that.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about, and I would agree.
I don't even know what happened to her, but her channel is just poof, gone. I don't know if she was flagged or whatever. But
I'll say I have a similar experience. I don't know if y'all know who Lauren Rose is, but I actually did a video on her for my Beauty and Brain series. She made a lot of really good videos in my opinion, and then suddenly she just shifted and went completely alt-right and only started putting out alt-right stuff. I responded to one of her videos, and then out of the blue, she just deleted all her content off YouTube. So
so there's been a couple of those.
What
was that? The Raging Storm did the same kind of thing.
Rage After Storm, yes.
Rage After Storm, yeah.
Worski,
she was like, okay, this is decent content, and then for some reason she went the full retard, and you're like, whoa, how did you go from what you were talking about yesterday to being all saying, oh, white people are better and those other races are inferior? And I'm like,
yeah.
I wouldn't say Worski went retard. I just think he went full blown fucking insane.
No, I questioned his mental health after he set his nipples on fire, but yeah.
I mean, Andy Worski, he's not a complete and utter moron, but he definitely went crazy, I would say.
I mean, with Rage After Storm, because I was following her content, as soon as I saw the video, What is Race Realism, I just face-palmed internally, and I was like,
I mean, Humane and 2 Cents, what do you think of Lauren Southern and her race identitarian political beliefs?
Well, I'll say what kind of confused me is that Lauren Southern was a libertarian, so far as I can see. I mean, a minarchist, but a libertarian nonetheless. Yet,
so far as campaigning to be elected as a libertarian candidate.
Yes, and she did when she ran for. I mean, she was the youngest candidate. I'm not sure ever, but when the one race she was in, she was. Yeah. And she got a significant amount of the vote. Now she started, I think her whole sort of drift toward the alt-right. She started moving towards border security and national sovereignty, which I've said before as an ANCAP, I don't support. I support open borders principally. I understand that it would be my view that you've got to eliminate welfare and the election process before you eliminate borders. But she went from a kind of a pragmatic support of borders to a more, really strong nationalism is important. Identity is important, not fully alt-right, but moving towards there. And I feel like she stopped talking about other issues, and that became kind of the central focus of some of her content, which is why I kind of stopped. I watch her a lot less than I used to. Now, to be fair, I think her documentary for South Africa was amazing and all that.
And then
I'm looking at
an upcoming documentary about borderless for the EU, I'm not seeing, I guess, maybe what you guys are seeing when you're talking about her alt-right leaning. Now, Brittany Pettibone, I would say, yeah, that's definitely coming through, and I think that's due to her kind of relationship with the was that guy from
Martin Sellner.
Yeah, Martin Sellner.
No, and I would agree with
Good.
I would agree with you, Brittany Pettibone more so. I would say less so for Lauren Southern, but I would say Lauren Southern's association with Brittany Pettibone also. Yeah. That kind of rubbed off on Lauren Southern.
Yeah, and Brittany Pettibone also, I don't know if she's still doing that podcast with Tara McCarthy, who was like outright insane because she's like I think she's half Armenian or something like that, and then half some other, and she despises her heritage because she's not pure white, and you're like, dude, what?
I'm not sure.
No, not Pettibone,
Tara McCarthy. Quick, I've never actually found this. Tree of Logic claimed that Tara McCarthy said that a black person and a white person having sex was bestiality. No, I've never actually found a place where she said that.
I'm a motherfucker
she did not
into interracial marriage, so this is like some...
Yeah, she did not say that in a chat or a live stream. That was on her Twitter feed, which she subsequently deleted.
Okay.
There are archived images of her saying that. She didn't say that a black person having sex with a white person would be bestiality. She quote tweeted somebody else who was talking about an interracial relationship, and she compared it to bestiality, and just like, well, it's close enough to what Tree of Logic claimed she said. And you're like, it's not exactly accurate, but you're like, she's basically saying it's close to bestiality. And yeah, Tara McCarthy... I don't know what was going on with that. She's gone full alt-right down the stupid path.
To the point that she hates herself.
Yeah, she's said that on streams where she literally is not. She's sad that she's not pure white, and she's upset that her kids won't be pure white too. And you're like, dude, what is wrong with you? Lauren Southern is still this side of the alt-right, but I think. She's been saying things like you were saying. So what she said when she was in Australia with Stefan Monalou, she said something to the extent of, I don't see how a culture can be stable when it's a mixed society. Like I forget the exact phrase she said, but it was something along those lines. She was saying, in order for a country to remain stable, it seems like all the history points to it being a homogenous society in order for it to be stable.
Dark Conservatarian, if I could quick just say, unfortunately, I'm going to have to go here in like 3 minutes, but so if I could quick just add something in. So what I guess the question that lingers in my mind about Lauren Southern is, now, as a libertarian, it would be my viewpoint if white nationalists want to only voluntarily, like of their own accord, want to come together and form their own voluntary white nationalist city, society, what have you, and not do business with any people of other races, I think that's their right. Now, I wouldn't personally think it's even good for them to do, but I would say that would be their right to do it. But it's unclear to me whether Lauren Southern is saying, I think it would be better if people formed of their own voluntarily formed ethnically homogenous societies, or is she saying, no, we need to use the power of government to make the societies ethnically homogenous?
Yeah, that is a point.
So I would say if all she's saying is, I personally think society would be better if we just chose to interact with people of our own race, fine, fair enough. You can still be a libertarian and believe that. But the moment you actually advocate, as Richard Spencer and others do, we need to use the power of the state to force everyone to be ethnically homogenous. Well, and
that's a problem.
So from what I understand,
Spencer has been more bold-faced with his.
Yeah. Spencer is saying we need to enforce this. From what I understand, Lauren Southern is saying it looks like that is the only option. And Stefan Monalou has said things to the same kind of extent, and he says he wishes it was another way, but it looks like the evidence is pointing to where in order to have a stable society, you need to have a homogenous culture or a homogenous race, because otherwise you have these, and studies have shown, and who was it? Blonde in the Belly of the Beast has also talked about this particular Harvard study where the author of it was actually suppressing the details because he had found that amongst races or amongst areas or communities where the races were mixed, there was an increase in, or there was, I guess, a decrease in trust between those groups. And he was trying to, come up with all other kinds of conclusions, and eventually people forced his hand and he had to release the data. And it's like, yeah, it seems like the more homogenous a racial group or an area is of race, the more trust there is in that community naturally. And so the question is whether that's the only way to build trust in a society is to have the entire group be of the same, or is there a way to shift the cultural mindset to trust people regardless of their race? And
hey, see you later, 2 cents. And by the way, I just wanted to. Damn it, never mind.
Oh.
I'll send him what I was wanting to say in personal DMs, but oh well.
Okay.
Anyway.
Well, thanks for the linking that Dark Con in the DMs of that song you referenced, but
So I don't think either of them are in favor of an ethno state. At least I've been following Stefan for years, and even what he's saying in his current videos and stuff like that. Yeah, that's not the message I'm getting from either Lauren or Stefan. What I'm saying is they're looking at the data, and it looks like the data is saying, well, we've tried multiculturalism, and every time it seems to, every time you try to mix these cultures together and try to get people to get along, it ends in disaster. Well, and the areas that have the least amount of difficulties with this are areas where the populations are largely homogenous ethnically.
Well, you got to clarify. What do you mean by multiculturalism? Do you mean like multiple different types of clothing, of foods made, or are you talking about different ways of living,
this
is shitting in the street versus flushing in the toilet, or speaking Spanish versus speaking English?
So everything is kind of.
Yeah, sorry, I know. I just hurt your feelings, yes, man.
Yeah.
Thank you for that description, Zach.
Now, JJ, you go. Shut up and walk that trail of tears, boy.
How about I throw you back over the border wall, boy?
But multicultural, because there are people from different cultures that are similar to one another that still have hostile problems when they interact with, so if you look at the Netherlands, right, the people from, at least from our perspective, the people from, Sweden, the people from Finland, I can't tell the difference, but for some reason, and ethnically, they are very close to one another. But when you put them in the same area, they tend to have conflicts between them. Same thing with, Irish and Scottish, right? Genetically, they're very, very similar. But when you put them together, they kind of fight with one another. And there's all kinds of records with that sort of thing. So to me, those types of situations actually disprove the ethnic component to it. And because that's what, when you're looking at data and you're looking at low crime rates and stuff like that, populations like Japan, where it's mostly, people of the same kind of genetic heritage, and people of, and in Denmark is one of the other ones that's mentioned, and Poland as well. Poland has a very homogenous ethnically group, and they've got a significantly low crime rate in their area. But
Humane, I just want to say I don't want this to go off on too much of a tangent about this, because we mentioned this type of topic in our response video to Richard Spencer during that debate. Hey, what's up, two plebs?
Yeah. He said he needs.
Sorry about that. I was muted. How goes it?
It's going pretty good. Two plebs. Everybody meet Two Plebs Talks News. This is a guy who I got acquainted to via Mod Wayne's House of Fun. pretty
Yeah,
cool
yeah.
guy, libertarian, and yeah. So
Well, it's actually two guys, two plebs.
It is, in fact, two guys, but when I appear on streams, it's almost always just one guy. The studio is in my house, so that just tends to be the way it works out.
Right.
All right. And so I don't want to go too much further down this tangent, but there are examples of people from different races, but of the same faith or culture, getting along just fine. Like this is very huge in the Christian community, where there are Christian churches that are multiracial and they all believe the same kind of thing and they all get along and there's no issues there. And they'll actually form communities around those churches. And I'm like, that to me points that the racial component is not as big as some people fear it is.
Well, the racial component's only ever as big as we mandate that it be, right? So here in the U.S., we went really far out of our way to decide that there is, in fact, a black culture that is very different from white culture. And that, of course, means they cannot be the same or agree on things. And in a church-like setting, you have a Christian culture, which finds black and white irrelevant.
Yes. Oh, and actually, while we're talking about this issue, that brings us to another icon, Candace Owens, who's been kind of a little polarizing in various communities. Because when she first showed up on the scene, I was like, oh, hey, this is something. Yeah, I've never seen anybody talk like this. She's funny. She's hot. She seems to be speaking truth to power.
Of course.
And then the whole
pseudo-conservative hack.
Conservative. You can.
Pseudo.
I can see that.
Pseudo-conservative. Just want to emphasize the pseudo part of what I'm saying there.
Yeah, so I can understand that, but I would say her impact on what is going on in the world right now is a lot bigger than I originally anticipated. Yeah, well, not just Archon, dude. I was hoping to meet her at the Phyllis Schlafly thing. I was like, hey, well, maybe after this whole thing we can get she was busy with something else. So I mean, yeah. Anyway,
not interested. I'm not fully convinced. I'm not fully convinced that her beliefs are actually legit. Like, somebody made a video detailing as to how, like, she was on a TEDx talk or something, speaking for liberalism, basically. And then in a very short amount of time, like months, if not weeks, she comes up with red pill black, speaking for conservatism. You know, it just seems a little bit too disingenuous and quick.
Well, if you did, I don't know if you saw the TEDx talk. She was talking about the specific incident where, so she was.
Well, I thought it was TEDx
it was TEDx. Yeah. So there was a racial incident that involved her high school and all that sort of thing, and that was part of the reason she started the whole social autopsy. But what she found out as a result, and she does mention this a bit in that TEDx, if I'm not mistaken, where she talks about, well, the people who you'd think would be most likely to help her and support her in her situation and view her as a victim, for some reason we're viewing her as the enemy, as someone who is going to expose them for, and it was like, well, that right there, she says that that's the overnight converted her or whatever. That overnight is probably an exaggeration on her part, but it seems like that was the catalyst. That was the moment where she's like, wait a minute, something's not right here. You know, something's rotten in the state of Denmark. So that's the kind of moment where she started looking into it. It was like, wait a minute. So I've been the victim here and I should have victim points and the people should be rallying behind me and and I'm fighting to get the trolls who are being racist and making comments and, putting people down and being bullies. I'm here trying to stop that. And the people who have been victims are telling me to stop trying to fight the bullies. That doesn't make any sense.
I just want to shout out like Red Feather's chat. She says she's just gaining popularity because she is repeating conservative talking points. I don't think she believes them though. Maybe I'm wrong. And also there's I don't want to mention race into this, but I almost want to say that there's a little bit of racial politics tied into this as well. I mean, even this one guy called Squatting Slav, that's his name, Squatting Slav TV. He mentioned all the people defending her on social autopsy just have a bad case of jungle fever.
Well,
I highly disagree because I actually looked into the code behind and all that sort of thing, and I was like, no,
Well,
what people are saying
you're
about
not-
this site is not right.
You're not outright defending her, though. You're just saying that the accusations are a little bit overblown. You think you say it yourself that you think that the intent was immoral, but
Yes.
the actual results was not as immoral as other people like Andy Worski, for example, are making it out.
Yeah. Yeah, well, everybody agreed with the original intent. I mean, like Chris Raygun made a video about this. I mean, everybody and their brother made a video about social autopsy a year prior, like when it was first announced and it didn't go anywhere. They were talking about how this could be terrible for, basically how the system could be abused.
Chris Raygun made a video of when that social autopsy was first. Yeah.
Yeah, like a year prior. Like, so this was what? Let's see. So that was probably 2016, like May or June of 2016. Like a bunch of big names made videos about social autopsy when it was first announced on GoFundMe or whatever, or Kickstarter or whatever it was.
Okay, so
yeah, when it was first announced.
Tree of Logic, you were not the first.
No. Tree of Logic. Well, she wasn't even the first because it was actually cognitive dissonance, or was it harmful opinions, or right, or
that
whatever
sounds
he.
right. I think he was first. I mean, he's usually on top of that sort of thing.
So
I think it was harmful opinions.
Well, it was his other channel, which I forget what he called it, cyber something or other.
Cyber violence or something like that.
Yeah. So cyber violence is the one who originally broke the news that social autopsy a year later was still up and running. And then Tree of Logic piggybacked on that, and Tree of Logic is the one that kind of exploded it. But then again, that's because she was partially making claims that were completely untrue about social autopsy. She's like, oh, it's got my name and my face on there. I'm like, no, it doesn't. I've looked at all the pictures. I've looked at the JSON files. You're not in there. No matter how much you want to be in there, you're not. The only reason you could know that you're in there is if you submitted your name and image. And guess what? It's not hard-coded. It's not part of the hard-coded data. It just didn't go anywhere. You think you submitted it to their database. It didn't actually get saved because all the information that was in that JSON file, that's hard-coded information, and it's a placeholder.
Okay, so can I just answer that with Control X?
Yeah.
I mean, look, there is no way to prove any of this, and by that I mean it doesn't matter which side you think is right. There is no way to prove what information they stored. Literally none.
Yeah.
I mean, you can prove that they have information, but you can never prove that they didn't have information.
Yes.
The notorious difficulty of proving a negative that way.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we don't know what was on their internal server. I just know from everything that was public facing that what people were claiming was not true. Because you could access everything on the public facing server and it did not match what people were saying was on there. So the fact, and then these same people who were bad mouthing this site again were talking about kiwi farms and keep linking to kiwi farms. I'm like, that's the doxing site, you idiots.
Using a doxing site to attack a plausible doxing site.
Yeah.
An active doxing site versus a plausible doxing site. Yeah.
Okay, so steering it back more towards the personality, the cult of personality.
Oh, that scared the fuck out of me. I heard dog bark.
Yeah, so steering it back to that, Candace Owens has been changing a lot for the Black community, especially since Kanye West, another political another icon, whether you like it or not. Kanye West tweeting about how he likes the way Candace Owens thinks, and then meeting with Candace Owens and Charlie Kirk, and then now I don't know, they're doing some kind of collaboration together, which is why she wasn't at the thing here in St. Louis. I don't know what the extent of that is. It might have been related to Kanye going to the White House. I don't know. Or it could be part of an album being released. Who knows? But even though in our communities and stuff like that, that seems like kind of a joke. But that is having a massive impact on the Black Democratic community, which when it came to Democratic voting blocks, like the Hispanics is mostly in favor of Democrats, but the blacks was like 80 or 90% blacks are going to vote Democrat no matter what. that is starting to change. We're seeing massive shifts in that demographic where it's like, oh, that used to be something Democrats could like, okay, we've got the LGBT vote, we've got the black vote, we're working on the Hispanic vote. And you're like, well, now they don't even have that black vote in, solid like they used to have.
Well,
now
they don't have anybody's vote is solid anymore. Though honestly, nobody does, right?
Well,
I'm not sure anybody ever did. But
I would say for a number of years, it was pretty like Obama, like
the Rust Belt. They could kind of rely on the Rust Belt.
Obama had the black vote. Look, again, the identity politics issue comes into play there. We've told black people that it is, black people is a culture. It's a way of life. It's not just a designation of your race. And so because Obama was like less than or more than 5% black, that was good enough. We have a black president. Ta-da! Everybody vote for him.
Wait. Well, according to Democrats, even if he was 124th black, he'd still be black.
Fair enough. In which case, by the way, I'm certain that I am black.
The Blaxicans.
But by the way, I got a question. Would any of you vote for Kanye in 2024?
Fuck no.
No.
Yeah,
it would be funny if he ran, but no way. Man. He is like, so he's got moments of like, dude, wow, that was actually spot on. But then
he has to
it's 90% insanity and 10% like supreme clarity. He's like an autistic person when it comes to understanding how the world works. I mean, not like, but I'm saying like most of the time it's like, what is he talking about? And it's like, oh, you just feel bad for the guy. And then he's got that 10% where you're like, dude, where'd that come from? Like, I don't know if you've met somebody who's got like autism where you're like, yeah, you feel bad for me. You're trying to, because I used to teach autistic kids and you're kind of trying to teach them basic, simple things. And then they do this like random multiplication of large numbers in their heads. And you're like, dude, what the hell? Like, that's like how, like, and I knew this one girl who was autistic and she had like perfect pitch and could play like multiple instruments without even practicing. And you're like, where does this come from? You're inept in so many areas. And then you got this one area where you're just like out of this world phenomenal at. And that's what I think Kanye West has is like,
I don't even think that matters, right? The problem with Kanye is and will forever be that he is as economically illiterate as basically everyone else.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to say this enough. The economic policies that you institute guide the country more than nearly anything else.
Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest reason why he would be definitely one of the last people that I would ever vote for in a presidential election or any type of election, honestly, because on his principle.
I don't know. Hold on. I would be very happy to see Dog Catcher Kanye.
Doug who or
Dog
Kanye?
Catcher?
Oh, Dog Catcher Kanye. Okay.
Yeah.
Hopefully it doesn't turn out like Michael Vick.
But for every one of his like profound statements or moments of clarity, he's got 9 other that are just like, what are you smoking?
Yeah, I mean,
I think if he ever got in charge, he'd have like 9 bad, terrible policies. You're like, dude, what are you doing? And then you have one. You're like, okay, that one I get. I wish somebody else had come up with that earlier. But
he raises the tariffs like to the point of like a recession.
Oh yeah, it would be running this country in the ground like pretty quickly.
I'm not even sure that like tariffs would cross his mind at any point.
His development has a tariff. There's tariffs on his mental development.
Could be, right?
Okay, so let's see.
So I want to ask two plebs. Who would you consider to be like your own personal political icons that you really like and that you really dislike, even? Some you like, some you dislike.
So let's start with I know that he's not necessarily political, but he does plenty on politics. Soul.
Who?
Thomas Sowell.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Dude, yeah, he's king.
Oh no, I would definitely consider him to be a political icon. I mean, he's done lots on economics and social issues primarily. Anyway,
Well, so he gets pigeonholed into economics a lot, but any of the discussion of the vision of the anointed brings so much of politics into focus in a heartbeat. And that, I mean, there's just no two ways around that. Anyone that has not read A Conflict of Visions should, because everything in the world will suddenly make a whole lot more sense if you read it.
Yeah, I don't think I've read that one.
If you've
my
read
list then.
Soul in general, you've probably heard him talk about the vision of the anointed. It is just a book dedicated to that idea.
Okay.
And in the world of political icons, depends on what you're looking to get out of them, but I really enjoy watching Trump happen. I mean,
watching Trump happen.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, he is the bull in the china shop. He is disrupting their entire system and exposing all of the man behind the curtain. Yeah, right. You know,
very much.
He's Toto pulling back the curtain on the Wizard of Oz.
It's
amazing
because I have watched for years. What the hell was his name? Just McCain, right? Mm-hmm. When he went up against Obama, he very notoriously said, "No, stop calling him a Muslim terrorist. We're just two guys with very different views. You know, we just disagree about how to run the country." And at the same time, they were talking about how McCain was a warmonger and was going to blow the Middle East off the face of the earth because he was effectively double-headed Hitler. And Trump showed up and went, "You're all pieces of shit." And they went, "You can't do that. That's our thing."
Yeah, I mean,
well, the other thing is he's good at flipping things against them, like their tools that they were trying to use against him. Like fake news was started to talk about the alternative media and all those that were giving Trump a good name. And he turns around and throws it right back in CNN's face. It's like, no, you're fake news. Exactly.
It's very I don't generally deal a lot with a culture war, but this part of it I find very amusing. It's incredible to see someone to the right of Stalin go, "Nope, you're just a piece of crap." He does it all the time.
Oh, dude, he even was making fun of Ford, right? Christine Ford, like at one of his rallies, and all the media pundits are like, "You can't do that," and everybody else is like, "Dude, yes, exactly. That's exactly what we were saying."
Right. We've been saying that for 50 years, and you haven't listened. Well, welcome to when someone on this side of the aisle does it. You hate it. Congratulations. And look, when I say they call him Hitler, I mean, what was it? Chris Matthews on the day of his. Not election, when he actually became president on the
inauguration.
Yeah, inauguration.
Thank you. Was sitting there. His speech was very Hitlerian. Like, well, look, you only get to call everybody to the right of you Hitler so long before at some point they just go, no, pound sand. And he is nowhere near as nice as that about it. So I am enjoying it. I don't know that I would look to him as some sort of guide for most things. That said, I like what he's doing on policy. So,
yeah.
Oh yeah, I don't look up to Trump when it comes to as a man of principle. Honestly,
no. when you're looking for somebody who's like a role model, like somebody who can he's not somebody I would hold up in that position. I mean, as far as a president, I think is like, dude, I can't think of anybody else who could fill the role that he's filling right now because it's necessary.
Well, nobody alive, that's for sure.
Yeah.
There have been a few people in history that one of my favorite things ever is somebody on the left that was bankrolled by CNN just released The Reagan Show, a documentary about Reagan being a bumbling fascist idiot who had no idea what he was doing and was really just this big over-the-top fascist asshole. And I went,
to be a satire.
Reagan?
Yeah, Reagan, right?
Ronald Reagan.
And you're like, do they have the right guy?
I mean, I think Alzheimer's may have started to. I think by the time he did leave office, I think he was starting to come down with it. Like they officially diagnosed him in 1994.
Maybe, but even that is irrelevant to what was being said about it at the time. And what was being said about him at the time is word for word what's being said about Trump in various ways.
Yeah,
and he was in a very different way, equally good at deflecting or getting rid of those criticisms.
I have one question to Humane, though. He says that he cannot imagine anyone else alive at the moment to fill in the role of president. What about Rand Paul?
Well, no, I don't think he would have been. I don't think he'd be successful at dismantling the system as it is. That's what Trump's role right now is, because the system has become so corrupt and they've been stewing in their own echo chamber and
pile of horse shit.
Yeah, the media is funneling their own leftist agenda, and they just keep it. People keep cycling in from Washington to the businesses that they just enacted laws to help, and then back to Washington and back. Trump is disrupting all of that, which I think has to happen before we can get somebody like a Rand Paul or something like that. So a little more.
I don't talking about somebody who can cause as much of a shit show media stir. Well, then, yeah, nobody can do it as effectively as Trump. I mean, such a media stir to the point that the opposition exposes themselves without us even having to try.
Yeah.
I mean, there's that. But what do you mean by like a dismantle the system? Like, because
hold on a minute. I think the shit show. I am developing this theory that the shit show is tactical, right? Because the Democrats just agreed to confirm a bunch of judges so that they could go campaign and nothing else would be brought up on the Senate floor, and so various other things. And the moment they walked away, something got brought up on the Senate floor, and they were terribly upset about this. And I went, well, this is the same kind of shit that Obama did during his time. We all had the same complaints then. You said it was okay, so now it's okay. Deal with it. But a lot of these things, he gets a lot of policy passed while standing on TV talking about Ford. And I mean a lot, right?
Yeah, so there's a lot of political theater.
Right? We spent a lot of time on the channel talking about like actual laws that got passed and the way that, what this will do and all that sort of thing. And way more than we could ever cover gets done, and no one is talking about it. No one gives a shit.
Well, do you know if the heartbeat bill has left committee yet? Because that was something that
the heartbeat bill.
Yeah, it's something Steve King was talking about. He was saying as soon as Kavanaugh is confirmed, they're pushing forward Iowa's heartbeat bill.
Oh Lord,
that's that's. I was like, dude, that's exactly what we need.
So let me look at this heartbeat and okay, yeah, I see what they're talking about. Okay,
yeah,
heartbeat bill is a form of proposed abortion legislation in the United States, which makes abortions illegal as soon as the fetus's heartbeat can be detected. Based on the conclusion that a fetus is a person as soon as it has a heartbeat, fetal heartbeats can be detected about 6 or 7 weeks into the pregnancy, but maybe as late as 12 weeks when detected with a Doppler fetal monitor. I've never heard of what that even is, but. I'm pretty sure that's going to be interesting.
That's the kind of legislation that I think is going to go under the radar. And because Democrats are too busy caught up in other things and defending Pocahontas and all that sort of thing. And I'm like, okay, that legislation is just going to go right through. And the hysterical people who are like, oh, they're trying to take away rights. And I'm like, that's the kind of bill that's going to get passed through without them even noticing it. Because
I don't
think so. Right.
That's why I don't approve of how the Democrats are handling the Trump presidency. Like, I think they would have stalled. They would have prevented Kavanaugh's confirmation had they gone through other ways of campaigning against him. And you had some theory about like depending on how the confirmation would have gone, if he would have even been confirmed, that one side's going to get fired up and the other side's not, and it could be to their own detriment.
Yeah. Okay, so and I do have to go in about a minute here, so I'll sorry to plebs. I know you were trying to say something, but since you asked me the question, we'll try to get this. Okay, so what I'm seeing is yes, the left is fired up because you saw the crazies clawing at the Freeport doors, being full zombie mode. I don't know if you saw. Well, so by the way, another icons or whatever. If you haven't seen Beauty and the Beta, their weekly podcast is really good.
All right.
But anyway.
That's a bit of a scare. I lost connection for a second there.
Okay.
God damn, you scared the fuck
Yeah.
out of me.
Yeah. Anyway, so they had they had a clip of the people clawing at the Supreme Court walls and saying "shut it down" and stuff, and they played the Walking Dead theme song over it. Yeah.
That was amazing.
So so that group is fired up, but it seems like they are unfocused, whereas the Republicans, they're fired up over the treatment of Kavanaugh, which I was not expecting to this level. So it seemed like I am expecting not a blue wave, not even a blue ripple. I'm expecting a red wave in the November 6th. Or is it 7th? No, it's 6th or 7th, whatever. But I think it's the 6th, right? That's when the voting.
In November.
Yeah. We'll just say in November. I'm looking at thing. I'm like, it looks like there's more than likely going to be a red wave because there's so many people on the Republican side who saw all of that and are like they are pissed, but they are pissed with a purpose. The Democrats got all pissed and hysterical, and they're running around crazy. There is no like the Republicans seem to be like laser-like focused on, okay, we just need to make sure that no Democrats get in charge because we've seen what happens when they are running or when they're even a small portion of the government. Things just go to complete chaos and they undermine everything we stand for.
California.
So I've heard a lot of people who are not even that adamant about being Republican. They're saying, okay, you know what? I'm not going to vote on principle. I'm just voting on keep Democrats out of Congress. And I was like, dude, and so it's not just Matt Christensen, because I know he was talking about that last Sunday, but I've heard a lot of other people, and there's Mark Dice had a video where they were interviewing people in New York, and a lot of them were having the same kind of sentiments. They're like, yeah, this whole Kavanaugh thing, we're so pissed off. We're going to the polls and we're telling all our friends they need to go and vote Republican, even if they are typically Democrat. And I was like, so that's a base that is fired up and focused, but the Democrats are in lunacy. They're busy fighting to protect Pocahontas, saying, oh, how dare you say she's not a real Indian? How dare Trump insult her? And they're protecting people like Beto, because I forget what's going on with his campaign or something like that, but it's being torpedoed. They're split in so many different directions trying to put out fires that they have no rallying cry right now. I thought they would have a rallying cry, but
so they
don't.
Kind of do. Basically, they just say Trump, right?
Yeah, but
and I mean, no matter
they've
what,
been saying that for 2 years, so
right, which I don't think is going as well for them as they want, because every time somebody gets on TV and goes, so record low unemployment, I mean,
yeah,
that's pretty much whatever else you think of the man, you have a job. Turns out people like that. And I mean, shocking, really. There's a lot of talk about, the Democrats like to play this, median wages haven't gone up, but whether you like it or not, cutting taxes for people who actually make money means that they have bigger paychecks. So the end result is everyone that makes more than about $11 an hour everywhere in the country, except California and New York, got a tax break. Now, that is an amazing-ish tactical move, because let's face it, California and New York were never going to go red anyway. So pissing him off doesn't matter for Trump.
yeah.
And everybody else might.
Unless the Democrats renominate Hillary Clinton, I think she'd lose in a landslide probably then.
That would be amazing.
And this is the amazing situation we find ourselves in, is every time there's a lull in news, Trump can point out like, oh, hey, record unemployment lows in, amongst women, record lows amongst the black community, he's got all these things. And those are the types of news that come out when there's a lull on the Democrat side. It's like the news is, well, look how crazy these people in Oregon are being. Look how crazy the people are being here. Look how crazy the Democrats are being here. That's the news that's getting out, is every time that there's a, hey, okay, that issue's dead. Let's move on to the next one. It's always them doing something so insane. The moderate voters, or the kind of like what's the word,
enlightened alt
The
centers.
casual Democrat, they're looking at the situation being like, nope, I'm out. So
Well, that's not.
they're yeah.
There's an hour-long discussion behind that phrase.
Oh yeah.
That sentence.
What, the casual Democrat? Or
Well, no, the moderate Democrat voter who goes, okay, the left has gone too far. Dear everyone, whether any of you like it or not, this is how we get conservatives. And it's how we've always gotten conservatives. Because the crazy left goes, we're going to go one step crazier. Go look at the advent of Social Security. The next vote after that was dramatically right-wing. And there's no possible way that it could have been if there wasn't people who generally voted left voting right. Now, I get it. FDR got to stay in office till the end of time or whatever, and he was the one claiming credit for that and all this other kind of crap. But every other election was like, nope, we're tired of you doing this lefty crap. And then he wrote out enough time and said, see, we're not killing everybody with this. And so then they decided it was good for him, which, look, is generally how those policies go. But the left does something crazy, and this creates a bunch of conservatives. It's the way that it goes. It's what I find so irritating about Tim Pool right now, because he's, oh, no, I'm still a liberal, and these people have now just gone too far. And I can't imagine how many times I've quote tweeted him being like, welcome to the right. This is how we all got here.
And Dave Rubin has been saying the same thing. It's like, well, I'm still a liberal, but I'm
right. I'm not convinced that Tim...
like, dude, you're a conservative. You're
Dave Rubin, I would say, is definitely right wing, but I'm not convinced that Tim Pool is right wing. I mean, he said that he would have preferred Bernie Sanders during the 2016 election above all the other three final contenders for president.
Right.
So here's how the actual transition goes, right?
But I do have to go. So thanks for inviting me.
Okay, well,
good talking to you, man.
Humane.
Yep. All right.
Hey, invite two plebs onto your chat so that you can have him on your weekly streams or something.
You should. I'll be around.
Okay. Oh wait, do you have a Twitter or something like that you can send me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Twitter
it'll be in the side chat.
_mind.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's it.
Yeah. Isn't Humane a part of the Strike Force podcast or whatever, Darkon?
No, I don't have him on Strike Force discussions because, for one thing, Ren Michaelis is on there. She, for some reason, hates him. And, of course, Cold of Ham is on there as well. And I think Humane would have an aneurysm if I was to invite him on the Strike Force discussions chat. And the Strike Force news stream, yeah, I don't have Humane as a co-host for the news streams.
Just send two plebs to he already sent Humane the... Okay.
Yeah, there we go.
But it's nice to meet you two plebs.
Yep. And nice talking to you. I do have to go, so now I got to set up. All right.
See you later, Humane.
But,
so you have to go, S-Man?
No, I was just saying. I'm just saying it's nice to meet two plebs.
Oh no, I'll be around. You too, man. Anyway, so what I was saying before he said he had to go. The transition works like this, right? And this is the way it's worked for most people on the right ever. You're somewhere between the third grade and 25. And somewhere along the way, somebody goes, this is all a bunch of crap, all of this crazy socialist liberal bullshit that you've heard. And you go, okay, well, I'd like to just talk to the right some more. And then someone on the right talks to you, and you start hearing like, well, you know, we're pretty big on like taking care of your family, and we're pretty big on, you know, the various standardized right-wing talking points. And then, you know, things like you should be able, if you work, you should be able to keep what you get. And all of a sudden it's, well, I agree with all that. And then it's maybe you're right wing. And from there, what you get is people who eventually move to the right and start abandoning socialist policies. Tim's problem is that he's trying to be stuck in some sort of crazy middle ground.
Well, what you're explaining is like a legitimate change in beliefs there. I mean, with Tim Pool, I mean, I'm going to be honest. I don't watch a whole lot of Tim Cast or anything like that. But from what I've seen from a layman's perspective is that there isn't any massive change in his beliefs or whatever. I mean, if he supports Bernie Sanders, that would mean that he supports social democracy type of policies, you know?
Yeah, I'll sock them.
right? And he advocates that as his place in the world. What I'm saying here is,
I mean, if those really are his economic beliefs, then you would be hard pressed to try and convince me that he is right wing.
no. I'm not saying that he is. I'm saying that he is at the tipping point, the capitalization point, I guess you could say, because it's always when the left takes that next step too far. Right? That's
Right.
always when people fall off the left train. And then they start very quickly to move to the right. Right?
Yeah, with Tim Pool's circumstance, it seems to be not a matter of legitimate belief change as to why he's being considered, being more and more considered as a right winger. It's more because far lefts are getting even further and further left wing.
Right. But that's what I'm saying, is that's always the catalyst, right? No one, I don't know, takes econ, well, maybe once in a lifetime far gone past, but no one takes Econ 101 and goes, oh my God, socialism is wrong, right? Because if the economics mattered, they would have abandoned socialism the moment they heard what socialism was.
Well, of course,
So-
yeah.
But
I mean,
on the
yeah.
other hand, when it's, oh, this crazy socialist train is going off the deep end, over the edge, et cetera, then it's, well, maybe I should start listening to the people who haven't been talking about this crazy socialist train. And that is the point where you get pulled to the right. And it's honestly, not to capitalize on a thing that Shapiro says all the time, but, the families are socialist, right? My kid, as much as I try and make him work for what he gets because he's getting on in kid years, the reality is I'm not going to stop feeding him no matter what happens. So, there is a reality that it's pretty socialist. From me according to my ability, to him according to his need. And maybe he doesn't get more than what he needs, but he definitely gets what he needs. And so being raised in this small socialist environment and then growing up is about learning that people don't just give you stuff. And there comes a time when you're growing up, and that's why I say up to about 25, maybe 30, right? Though there are a lot of studies that say you're pretty well set in your ways after 25.
I would almost think that maybe if a person at a very young age in their child years was not introduced to politics like in a rather meaningful way, that they will gravitate more towards that socialist or social democrat type of lifestyle, because they're thinking, I have always been provided by my parents. I mean, this is also providing that their parents are not abusive pieces of shit. But,
that helps, yeah.
But maybe even spoiled them, actually. I mean, if they've been spoiled and had all their lives catered their lives to them, but they haven't been taught politics in a meaningful way, they probably will gravitate more towards Bernie Sanders just naturally, because that's all they know is being provided for. Ooh. I mean, myself, I have been introduced to politics ever since a very young age, but not in a necessarily a meaningful way until I started listening to Mark Levin in my teenage years, at least. But still introduced to politics in a right-wing type of way, so I would not have been for socialism or anything like that.
Speaking from personal experience, I got into politics when I was rather young myself, and I would just look at policy as to what I thought was objectively the better way to go. So I started out as like center left, and for a couple of years I moved further to the left. Like I would have said 4 or 5 blocks to the left. The furthest left I ever went was like 6 blocks, but I was still fervently anti-communist. But I was thinking like single payer healthcare. Those were the type of things I advocated for at the time. And then as time progressed forward, around the 2015-16 era, I noticed I was moving kind of more to the right. And then after the 2016 election, I was center left again. And then I started to move more to the right to where I am right now.
Wait.
So, can I address something that Dark said a minute ago, which is the idea that you'll grow up and be a leftist because families are socialist. I think that is a modern view of the issue, because certainly families have been socialist since the beginning of time, right? We protected women, we protected children. That's the species survived, so this happened. And, we fed them and all this, we kept them away from danger, and we did all of these things. And yet for a very long time, we weren't socialist at all. I would suggest that the advent of the public school system had a lot more to do with this than the idea of having a socialist family unit. Though you could equally come back at me and say, you know, during like the farm years of the country, you started farming at 13, but still up till 13, everything was provided for you. This isn't the idea of a family unit being socialist, and it basically is, does not necessarily promote that being the way the world needs to be. On the other hand, once you get, I mean, especially to the modern era, where you hear that the Great Depression was solved by the Great Society programs.
New Deal.
Right, and the New Deal, or I'm sorry, the New Deal, Great Society came later. But it is solved by the New Deal, and then they don't give you any of the information that was going on at the time. They just said, well, this fixed it. That's the kind of thing you hear. You get, oh, well, then these are the programs that solve what's going on. And when you go back and read people like Soul about what happened during that time, what you find out is that the New Deal probably created, effectively, the Great Depression. And the hundreds of times we'd had recessions before that, and no one did anything, and they all went away, and that's why we don't care about them, were because no one did anything. And so it's how much information we can screen from you, right?
How much you can, what from them?
Screen away from you, right? So, I mean, if all I tell you is that socialism is great, and then I even reframe socialism's failures as successes, then socialism sounds great, you know?
I mean, I think with the logic that you're bringing about there, a point can be made that everybody should be like, we're kind of getting off of the subject of political figures and icons, but still to like, to kind of wrap up this tangent right here, I think a person can try to make the point that maybe that in philosophy, by philosophy, everybody should be socialist to the extent that we should like willfully help our fellow man, you know, donate to charities, so forth. Do not leave anybody just dying on the streets. But when a person says, I'm a socialist or I'm a capitalist, instantly people think in a government and political sort of circumstance. I mean, not even government necessarily, but maybe even a mob rule type of circumstance with Owen McDonald, for example, as you've heard me mention before. I mean, he doesn't necessarily support the idea of government. I mean, even Zexisy, a socialist, like, I'm sure you've heard of him. Zexisy?
I don't think so, actually.
Yeah, a socialist YouTuber that gets response videos done to him by the ANCAP, by the ANCAP community quite often. Even he is against the idea of government, but still wants socialism. So basically, the only other way that you could have socialism without government is through some kind of collective mob rule, you know?
Well, so that's like the idea of the ANCOM, right? Which is just a goddamn myth. You know, I'll have an anarcho-communist society, but the idea of socialism is fallacious unto itself, right? In that same sense, the idea that everything is somehow going to work out. And some of the best examples of this are, in fact, the communist, what are they called? Well, communes, right? All over the country, where you go watch documentaries about them and things, and yeah, man, we all like, we make our hippie glass and all this crap, and like, man, I twist weeds into a wreath, and the whole time you watch it, you're thinking, how the fuck do you people eat? And then somewhere near the end, they go, oh, we all have EBT cards. Okay, so what you're saying is communism needs the government. You just like the government to be away from you. Okay, that doesn't work that way.
You want the government to do everything for me, but do nothing to me, not even tax me.
Right. And this is the kind of thing, I mean, these contradictions exist everywhere. And I would like to say that you did one other thing there that is a sort of a problem in modern society, in my opinion. The idea of equating empathy with socialism, right? Or sympathy, even, if not empathy, right? If I see a guy that is homeless and I say, hey, man, here, let's go eat some lunch. I'm not being socialist. I'm choosing to do that. And my empathy is not inherently socialist.
I mean, you're the one who like said that families are socialistic with the way that they practice. So I was kind of like just bringing up a philosophical point of view as to how people should naturally and willfully be towards each other.
Sure.
And by philosophy, people should be peaceful as well. There shouldn't be any war. But the reality of the circumstances is that there's always going to be war. Thus, we'll always need a military defense. And the same thing with economics. Realistically, people are selfish, or they only care for the people like really close to them. Thus, why in a lot of ways we have capitalism, so that people will actually be motivated to actually work, or else they will suffer hardships. You know.
Well, so you're conflating a lot of things real fast there, right? So families are socialistic, and there's no way around that. The economic system is he who does the least gets the most, respective to what they do. Now, that is definitively not capitalistic. On the other hand, I challenge you to find a 3-day-old that can have a job. It's just not likely to be a thing. And the idea that voluntarist aid is even remotely socialistic is I don't know how else to say it, the language of the left, right? It's us surrendering the idea that the moment you give somebody something, it's socialism, which is not true, right?
No, what I think is truly socialism is when socialism in practice, in political and economical practice, is when you start forcing people, either by mob or by government, to help out their fellow man against their own will.
You got it, right? And look, part of the reason that I say the family is socialistic is that the force element is there. And it always has been, whether anybody wants to talk about it or not, right? Despite that we now have all these child abuse laws where the state will quite literally enforce the socialism of your family. The reality was, before we had these laws about child abuse and all that, there was a limit guaranteed to what you could do to your kids. And it may not have been a legalistic limit, but it was a socially enforced one, right? If you punch your 5-year-old, someone is going to come tell you that that's wrong. And giving the time frame where that might be possible, or likely even, the way that they were going to come tell you that is someone was going to walk over with a baseball bat and hit you in the face, right? Like, oh, you don't like that? Stop punching your 5-year-old. We have enforced this socialistic idea since the beginning of time. And in a lot of ways, we should. I mean, what benefit is there to punching a 5-year-old ever for any reason?
Right. And by the way, I just want to say, like, as an appreciator of art, I mean, you take a look at my profile pic, for example. I just want to say that I like the art for your profile pic.
Thanks. I had to have it commissioned because I suck at anything to do with art.
Oh, okay. Well, you see, my profile picture here is like just basically me taking a picture of myself in the hallway of my apartment, taking a pose, and then I animated that, and then I changed up the color of my skin a bit, and I just had some like stock blue fire footage that I found on YouTube, downloaded that, and put it in like a certain still frame, and I like took a screen cap of it and scaled it down on the paint program. Yeah.
It looks good, man. Actually,
it's a good way to cheat around Photoshop, you know.
Yeah, what's it been, like a month since I met you? I've been going through your content, and really, your various little artistic things there, like you've got that full size picture of it. It looks like the same thing that you do in some of your videos. I mean, it looks good, and this is why I commissioned someone else to make a drawing of me, because I vaguely well have stick figures down.
Okay, so anyway, getting this kind of back on the subject. I mean, talking about political icons that we like and dislike. Like, I don't think I heard you mention some that you dislike. Like,
No, I hadn't quite got there yet. I figured I'd go with 3 of each, and I think I'm still short one. Though, in the world of political icons, if they need to be live, I start to run into a problem. But who's that guy, the super woke Polish guy that was going around for a while?
I don't know, honestly. What do you mean by super woke? As in, he was
Like,
a leftist?
No, capitalist as fuck.
Okay, well, you use the language of leftist SJW, so I thought
Fair. No. The guy that was like, the EU is garbage. You're all a bunch of socialists. You're going to destroy our country. Capitalism's the only way. Leaving the EU is the best thing any country could do.
I honestly don't know. I mean, I think I know who you're talking about. Sargon actually made a video about this certain Polish politician. Yeah, and that's another political icon to talk about.
I like that guy.
What, Sargon?
No, the Polish guy.
Okay. Like, I mean, I saw you do a video yourself as well, talking about the whole Sargon versus Medegar drama and how it's like how it's affected your view on the guy, Sargon. I mean,
so I don't know that the Sargon Medegar thing affected my view of Sargon much. It just that was punching into the ether, right? Sargon likes to think that he's funny, and he occasionally is amusing. I will grant him that. On the other hand, Jim's a comedian. And you can slice whatever he does, whatever way you want. Jim is just a comedian. And therefore, the only worthwhile attack you could ever make against Jim is that he's not funny. And you can say that all you want, but no one is going to believe you. Right?
I mean, the thing about Sargon, though, I mean, the main reason as to why that I've learned to, I wouldn't say full-on dislike him because, okay, I've unsubscribed from him, honestly, and I've learned to dislike him more and more. I mean, Rin Michaelis kind of helped me to grow sort of a distaste with him, and then there was the whole child groomer accusation, which I thought that was pretty slanderous. That was pretty slanderous, Sargon. Like, what the fuck?
It really was, right? And then he played the left's game really hard. Yes, Jason is absolutely correct. That's who I'm talking about.
Janus Corwin Mike. And by the way, Red Feather says that the guy on the right in your profile pics looks like Michael Moore.
Yeah, I caught that. He doesn't look like that in real life. He is actually a Mexican in real life.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I thought
he's
he
the
was,
other dude on the Monday.
I thought he was a redneck.
Well, maybe a little.
Or unless he's like a Hispanic redneck.
Pretty much.
Because I know of some. I know one particular Hispanic redneck within our circles named Brandon. Yeah.
Yeah, Peter and I have been friends for over a decade now. And most of the like really big things we've ever done together is built stuff. So if that fills you in as a redneck, then he's on the money redneck.
built stuff like, okay, does he like guns? Does he like trucks? Does he like beer? Does he somewhat at least like country music? Does he wear boots? I mean, I saw that he wears like a ball cap. And has he ever built like a fence with? Has he ever built a fence? Like, has he done any of those things I mentioned?
So, don't know his view on trucks. Honestly, it's California, so we all drive commuter cars. Because gas is like $4 a gallon, and it's always expensive and always has been. Not
as bad as Hawaii.
No, not as bad as Hawaii. Though we are ridiculously close for being mainland. He does not listen to country music much. he's one of these jackasses that kind of listens to everything, and people say that and don't mean it. I have gone through his music collection. He listens to everything, whether he intends to or not. Most of the time, I get the feeling. He has definitely built a fence. He and I have built multiple fences, freezers, rebuilt the sides of houses, all kinds of stuff like that. He wears a ball cap, mostly. It's as close to a uniform as you get for the show. And we went and got hats that say pleb on them because, two plebs.
And if you want to become a co-host of my show, you got to wear yourself a freaking pea coat and sunglasses indoors. No, I'm joking.
I got to go get some crazy shades.
Yes. Some old grandpa sunglasses like my own.
Yeah. Anyway, to get vaguely back to the point of the stream,
Right.
political icons that I absolutely dislike, right? Bernie Sanders. And I know that's shocking, right?
Oh, so shocking. A right-wing libertarian dislikes Bernie Sanders. No.
You know what I mean?
I overall dislike him and disagree with him massively.
Right.
But in all honesty, I do find him respectable compared to some other Democrats, and especially compared to Hillary Clinton, because at least Bernie Sanders is principled. He legitimately believes in his principles. I massively disagree with those principles, of course, but Hillary Clinton, aside from wanting to more gun control and wanted to preserve abortion, I don't think any of her beliefs are legitimate, especially economically speaking.
Even her ideas on abortion and gun control are horrendously flexible. Hillary is the ultimate capitalist in the sense of the only thing she cares about is power, and therefore she'll do what she can to get it. She's not after money; she's after power. And she is a terrible person as far as I can tell in any way, shape, or form. Right. But doesn't even make my list as people that I really dislike. I mean, she's a flash in the pan annoyance every time she runs for something. But other than that, not that big of a deal. Common sense guy. There's a buildup. That's all I'm saying.
By the way, Common Sense Guy, the link is still open. You can come on if you'd like, dude.
Red Feather and money. I don't think she's after money. I
don't really think so too. I mean, I actually saw this one stream between a socialist frenemy of mine named Lapis, aka the Effeminate Degenerate. She was like debating another guy called 40 Ounce, and both of them agreed and came to the conclusion that Hitler was one of the type of people that doesn't really care about any kind of economic principle. He was basically principled on the issue. Just whatever can get his ultimate agenda through, because the ultimate issue that he really cared about was racial identity politics. Would you agree with that assessment?
Kind of, at least in the sense that he saw economics more as a means to an end than a thing to hold to. But in that sense, I think to some degree that almost compels him to believe in an economic system, because certainly you can't say the Jews are better at making money than you, therefore capitalism. It does not work that way.
If there's any really economic principle that he does believe in, it would have been like plutocracy, But even that, I wouldn't say as much of a principle. It's just a way to cheat the system for your own bidding. Plutocracy is.
This is the problem. We have stopped learning about actual fascism, right? Because plutocracy is the nice name that we give for fascism with a slight power imbalance towards companies as opposed to the government, right?
Certain select companies, at least, because some other smaller competitive companies, they'll be all like, "Oh, fuck those companies, we want to destroy them." But yeah, I get your point.
Well, so Hitler wasn't going down to Bob's Five and Dime and being like, "All right, we need to legislate Bob's Five and Dime," right? He didn't care. On the other hand, If you were a major producer in Germany, the idea that the government made better choices for your company than you was heavily fascistic, right? And so the big difference between fascism and plutocracy effectively comes down to, do we actually talk to the companies? And if the answer is yes, it's plutocracy. If the answer is no, it's fascism.
I think that if, I mean, speaking of neo-Nazis or just Nazism in general and political icons, I think another political icon that I really dislike would be Richard Spencer.
I don't care about Richard Spencer, right?
I mean, he's pretty much irrelevant to me, but whenever, just his voice sounds so intolerably douchey, for one thing. And also, I did like a full stream pretty much reviewing well, actually, I participated with Humane Mind doing a whole stream reviewing the Sargon versus Spencer debate. And I just could not disagree more with what he was saying, what he wanted to put into practice, and so forth.
Well, sure, but hold on now, because this is a thing that we do, right? So the idea of whether or not his voice is douchey is as subjective as it gets, right? And give the man his to his audience, he is charismatic and well-spoken. Now, whether or not you think that's true is almost irrelevant. He is selling a product to people, and he does it well. And that's why he's the biggest name in the alt-right and probably always will be. Now, he may be the biggest fish in a small pond, but he's still the biggest fish.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that kind of brings up the point. What would we consider a good political icon? Which I guess is something that we kind of almost scratched the surface on earlier in this stream when my 2 cents was still on. But we did not quite dive deep into. What do we consider to be a good political icon? And certainly not a person's voice, because let's be honest, Ben Shapiro does not have the most relaxing.
All right, guys. So what I'm saying is,
yeah, he pretty much sounds like a squirrel in a tuxedo, but he doesn't have the most insufferable voice. You know what are some people?
Squirrel from Over the Hedge, right?
Yeah. You know who sounds like excuse me. You know who are some people that do have an insufferable voice? People like Kyle Kulinski, Cenk Uygur, and Riley Justin Dennis.
Oh, yeah. Well, so that's mostly the Riley Justin Dennis thing. Comes down to whether or not you can tolerate people speaking with a fake lisp. And I'm with you there. I hate it. Just please stop it. But that unto itself isn't that big of a deal, all things considered. If somebody was running around with a fake lisp because they thought it mattered and they were saying something that was important and relevant, I would listen to them. And so would you. And by the way, if we're going to talk about people's voices being relevant to whether or not they're a good political advocate, then Barry White is the single best political advocate in all of history. Maybe next to James Earl Jones, right? You know,
I mean, if it came to like political icons on the left, for example, I mean, we're talking about people with that have a good voice in their groups. Tim Black, he's I don't know if you ever heard of the guy.
No.
The guy is a leftist. He's a bit of a Bernie bro. He supported Jill Stein during the 2016 election, but the guy seems really humble about, gun rights. Like, he's pro-gun rights to a certain extent, at least, but he's a leftist when it comes to, I think overall when it comes to racial issues, and of course, a pro-single-payer healthcare and all the rest of those. But the guy is intellectually honest, and he has a considerable amount of credibility, I would say. I mean, he was willing to call out Bernie Sanders for, like, being kind of spineless with supporting Hillary Clinton during the general election, you know?
You're talking Tim Blake?
No, Tim Black. No. I know who you're talking about there. Tim Black runs a channel called TBTV. Let me see if I can actually find his channel. But even when it comes to like leftist social justice warriors, as we call them. Tim Blake is not that bad. I mean, he was willing to call out Chrissy Winters for the whole drama that she ended up stirring up with ranting feminists on how dare you be friends with Shoe on Head, who is friends with this piece of shit called Lauren Southern. I mean, Tim Blake, Tim Demotivator opinion, he was willing to call that out. Major props to him. That gives him some amount of credibility in my eyes. Let me find you Tim Black here.
No, I Googled him while you were talking. I recognize the face, but only in some peripheral way. So.
I mean, if there was a leftist that I could subscribe to, it would probably be Tim Black, from what I've seen of him so far. But yeah, just never been super motivated to subscribe.
Well, here's sort of the problem, right? Is there's no way, in my opinion, and this is probably the kind of thing that makes me such an angry dick some days, but there is no way to separate a lot of these people's opinions from their personality. And it's not because I just hate things on the left. I've actively tried, right? Like, and the times that this is most evident is when I watch television shows, and it's we're going to start enlisting this heavily leftist crap into the TV show plotline. And like, well, look, I've loved this show for like 3, 4, 5 years, and all of a sudden you have to do this, and it changes the characters. And in the same way that it changes the characters in your favorite TV show, it changes people, right? So people who get very, very leftist and really buy into it and are political figures on the left change their personality, because there's a view of the world that definitely changes the dynamics of what kind of person you are. Everyone is a victim. Everyone needs something given to them. And it changes even the way you speak. And it becomes a pain in the ass to listen to.
I mean, there is a point to be made right there. I mean, I particularly get annoyed whenever Bernie Sanders tries to pander to people's jealousy. I mean, I remember this one speech that he was having in front of a crowd, and he just mentions the wealth of the Waltons family. The Waltons own so-and-so $1 billion worth of net worth. And just of the mention of their wealth, the crowd was booing. I was thinking to myself,
why?
Why would I care? I mean, I personally would not care about a person's wealth. I could not care less. But that's the thing with Bernie. He panders to people's jealousies, which is what annoys me about him primarily. I don't know of how much Tim Blake sympathizes with that, but I can only imagine him being a Bernie bro probably agrees with that somewhat. But yeah.
Right. And this is what I mean, right?
Tim Black. Did I say Tim Blake? I meant Tim Black.
No, I said Tim Blake. But
I meant to say Tim Black when I said sympathizes with Bernie Sanders and his jealousy pandering.
Well, I might have caught you up.
But anyway, sorry, go on.
So, I mean, but this is the story, right? And to the question that you were talking about, that you were talking with 2 cents about, what makes a good political advocate?
Right.
And I think that question is best answered as he who will lie to you the least, right? Now, understanding who we're talking about, understanding that politics sort of induces lying quite a bit, there's a lower limit of what you're going to get here. But this is why I advocate Thomas Sowell so often, right? Because he's not lying to you. Now, you can disagree with him. You can think his ideas are wrong, whatever it is you want to do.
But he's not like he's saying that in the Holocaust, only 1 million Jews died.
Right. That just doesn't happen. There's no time in which he's not providing a source saying, like, look, I think this is the correct way to go because of these 50 things. That's the way dealing with Tom Sowell works. And the way dealing with people like Bernie works is he goes, he gets on TV and he stands next to some douchebag who's popular and he says, democratic socialism is amazing. And the guy next to him goes, socialism is terrible. And Bernie says, democratic socialism, big difference. And it's different.
I hate that semantics argument, that semantic debate right there. He's a democratic socialist. Big diff. Shut up. Let's just continue on with the conversation.
Well, so and this is the game, right? Is the guy next to him goes, well, then what's the difference? And Bernie goes, huge, and hilariously, just like Trump, by the way. This is an actual thing that happened. And if you go to all of the times where people have said, okay, Bernie, outline the actual difference, all he does is deflect. Because he is a fucking liar. And this is the problem when everybody goes, oh, Bernie actually believes he's an honest guy. No, Bernie is not an honest guy. He may actually believe, but he's as dishonest as they come, right? He says things. And then the moment that it's time for the meat to meet the metal, all he does is run away. And as long as you're willing to tolerate that sort of dishonesty as an honest thing, then Bernie seems honest. But if you actually want an answer to a simple question like what's the difference between socialism and democratic socialism, and this may or may not change your opinion on whether or not Bernie has a good point, then Bernie is a dishonest fuck, and he always has been. What about Ann Summers, the feminist, a good political person? Are we talking about, oh, God damn it. You sure you're not talking Christina Hoff?
I'm sorry. I'm paying attention to my search here. I was like looking
no
up.
Worries, man. I was answering chat there. But anyway, this idea that what makes a good political icon, the not honesty in a sense where I think they're good people, more honesty in a sense where they say, look, this is reality. Now, we can make decisions based on that reality, but this is reality. Right. That's all I'm asking for, because we're in 2018 politics, right? I don't even care that people say crazy shit on a regular basis, because if I did, I'd lose my mind every single day. On the other hand, stop lying to me about what reality is, because if we can't agree on reality, then we can't even agree on whether or not your idea is a good idea, because the output doesn't matter. The input doesn't matter. The policy itself doesn't matter. There's no reality. We do whatever we want. No worries, common sense guy.
I mean,
I'm bad with names too.
So basically, if with a leftist, you can at least agree on the base facts. You can at least respect him and have a open conversation on whether a certain idea backed up by certain base facts is a good idea.
Well, so if somebody came to me and they said, look, every socialist country in the world has failed. Every country that anyone has ever championed under the premise of socialism or communism has been garbage.
Well, I'm not including socialists when I say that, by the way. No, just kidding. I mean, there's hardly any far leftists that I respect, but there's like at least two that I could name off the top of my head that have been respectful to me, and so I try to remain respectful towards them as well. But anyway,
so that's a different subject that we should cover in a minute. But if somebody came to me and they said, every socialist country has failed and every major socialist policy has failed. Now, I think we could get this finagled to work right. And I understand those failures, and I'd like to learn from those failures. And I understand your unwillingness to go down the socialist road because of all of its failures. And the likelihood is, if we, based on historical precedent, the likelihood is if we go socialist tomorrow, we're going to fail. But what we need to do is sit down and take into account every single socialist failure that's ever happened, every single communist failure that's ever happened. I think what we could produce was the best system in the world. And yes, I'm willing to say that that means people who want to be extremely successful never will be. I'd listen to that person. Now, don't get me wrong. I would never agree with them, but I would listen to them. And I would have respect for them as a person, because the reality is they are acknowledging the failures of what they're advocating and suggesting that maybe this time they'll do it better, and that the negatives of their system are real unto itself.
Mentioning Lapis again, one thing I think you'll like about Lapis is that she does not pull the no true Scotsman fallacy so much when talking about failed socialist examples, like, for example, Venezuela or even Soviet Russia, for example. At least if I recall correctly in my conversations with her. But I could be wrong, could be falling flat on my face, but that's what I remember in conversation with her.
Sure.
At least she's not as outward about saying not true socialism, you know?
Ah, so at least we're veiled. Look, and I'd be willing to listen to and respect that sort of idea, even if I disagreed with it wholeheartedly from the ground up in every way that has ever existed. But if you can come to me and go, look, yes, I'm going to limit the top end of success, I just think we'll have average success better. I mean, we can argue about that, and they'll be wrong, but at least there would be some sort of self-awareness. And that unto itself is a thing that I've come to really appreciate in the past, I don't know, 5 years or so. Because generally speaking, what I get with hyper-progressives or socialists is no self-awareness. Just literally none, right? Oh, that wasn't socialism, therefore socialism is good. Okay, so what is socialism? Well, it's this thing that I dreamed up where magic happens. And that is one more step, right? There will be no, well, we're going to take all the money from the rich and then everyone will be happy, right? Like understanding that, no, there is a limit. Now, effectively, what I'm advocating for here of people I would be willing to respect is the mixed economy motherfuckers from the 90s. Now, I don't like them either, but at least I could respect them because they said, no, really, what we're saying is there needs to be a capitalist underpinning, and we are honest about our ideas that we're going to put some socialism on the back of communism or on the back of capitalism. And that is going to mean, yeah, we steal from the rich and give to the poor. And that's the way it is. Right.
We steal from the rich to give to the poor, but at least we keep the rich keep some of their riches. Whereas a full-blown socialist would just say, no, take all the riches.
Or, well, I mean, at that point, you're moving towards communism. But
right.
Again, the thing that I think helps socialists and hyper-progressives and, well, just general progressives and communists so much is the dishonesty. And so maybe I'm being a little underhanded in what I would like to see out of them because the reality is the more honest you are, the less you think socialism's a good idea. You know? But on the other hand, at least if you're going to advocate for this shit, don't lie to me about it.
There was something else that I wanted to mention. We're going off on so many tangents, although this is quite fun.
Let me get us back vaguely on page here.
Well, I remember what I wanted to say now. I mean, I think what largely helps us determine what we might individually and personally consider to be good political icons is whether or not we agree with them. It is one of the big contributing factors. And also, there's a little bit of cult of personality in there as well. Like, who would you rather sit down at a bar and drink a beer with rather than does this person speak facts the best? Like, the person who is, like, dishonest, he could be, like, the better person to, like, shoot darts with or go shooting with just in general, and people like him better than the person who is, like, socially awkward but still is pretty accurate on the facts. And they'll like that former mentioned person over the latter mentioned person.
Now we're discussing whether or not the beer test supersedes other ideals. And by the way, if you think that is a good method of determination, then
no, I don't really think so. I mean, a lot of the loyalist Trump supporters, during the late days of the 2016 primary thought that was a good method to determine whether or not they like Trump versus Cruz. It was
that's an idea that's been pervasive since the late 80s.
No, you're right. I mean, a person could even go back further than that, although there is a point to be made that it has definitely become more prevalent in the last 20, 30 years than ever before.
I mean, yeah. Though it was a clarification of an idea that had been around for a while. If you could look at a politician and say, yeah, he's one of the guys, right? That made him seem like a real person. And thus the idea of the beer test. Are you someone that I can sit down with and have a beer? And let me be clear about this. The person who wins the beer test 100% of the time, probably for all of history, is Bill Clinton. I mean, look, I hate most of the shit the guy did, though he did stay out of the way of the IT fucking boom. But nearly everything else to do with his personality, okay, he's a creepy rapist. But that aside, I'm not a woman. So would I like to sit down and have a beer with Bill Clinton? Yeah. If nothing else, I want to talk to the guy for the next 2 hours.
I mean, compare him to like Ronald Reagan. I mean, for the beer test, just as an example.
Well, therein is the thing, right? So Reagan, for those of us on the right, wins the beer test, right?
Right.
Because you could sit down and he's a real, right-wing, down-to-earth guy who does all the right-wing things. On the other hand, he doesn't cross the political aisle very well in the world of a beer test. I mean, better than most people on the right. On the other hand, Bill Clinton crosses that aisle intensely because for every single person that was ever in a room with Bill Clinton,
looking at it objectively minded is what you're saying.
Right. And so every single person that was ever in a room with Bill Clinton was like, look, the guy's amazing. He's there. He's in your, he's very engaged with you. He makes you feel like you're the center of the room. He knows how to make you feel like you matter. These are very important in a beer test sense if you're trying to quantify the things that make it real.
Right.
And the reality is he was beating the hell out of Reagan for that. Now, for the right wing, everybody wants to sit down with Reagan because, like, we agree with him.
Because they pretty much have the blinders on in that I agree with this guy, You
got it, right? That's the deal.
But when it comes to charisma, the most charismatic president of modern times would be Clinton, is what you're saying.
Yeah, it's Bill.
Bill Clinton, not Hillary Clinton. Bill Clinton.
Exactly.
Well, Hillary Clinton, of course, wasn't a president, but she was a presidential candidate, and
not charismatic at all.
Yeah, just creepy as fuck.
So, I mean, in that sense, if that's what we want to go with, then understand the left wins this, and it's not just Bill. This has been true about. Look at Obama. Now, if you try and step away from his being a socialist asshole that nearly ruined America, the likelihood
call him socialist.
You're wrong.
I mean, okay, don't get me wrong. With modern progressivism, there's a lot of rhetoric and policies that are definitely an offshoot of Marxism and socialism. I'll agree with that, but just okay. Maybe it's because I've been exposed to Owen McDonald for so long in comparison to other leftists that makes me like Bernie Sanders in comparison to Owen. That makes people like Bernie Sanders and Obama look milk toast in comparison.
Sure.
I mean, just saying. Maybe that's the reason why I get sort of antsy when somebody like calls Obama or Bernie a socialist. I'm just thinking in my mind, socialist light. But anyway,
if you spend your time really balls deep in the socialist section of the world, you find out a few things, right? One, modern day socialists have no idea what Marx was talking about and are idiots. And even Marx would have disagreed with them. In fact, they openly advocate things that Marx said could not be true.
Right. This is rewinding back to what you said on one of the recent episodes of Modwine's House of Fun. You were saying that Marx is the first one who said not true socialism to his followers that were further left than even him, right?
So, kind
of. You said something along those lines, I mean.
Well, so herein became the problem, right? Marx wrote Das Kapital, right? And it advocated lots of things, all of which were wrong. But people then took those and they evolved the ideas. And then they, decided the evolutions were Marxism. And they came back and they fed them to Marx. And Marx went, that's not Marxism. And if that's what Marxism is, then I am not a Marxist. Now, if the reality of the situation there is what Marx said is, I wrote a thing, you're not saying a thing. Therefore, if you're going to relabel whatever the hell you're doing as as Marxism, then no, I don't agree with that.
What I thought you were trying to say, like in the episode of Mod Wayne's House of Fun on capitalism, was that his followers were more radical than even him, basically.
That's easy, an easy way to look at it from modern day, right? Keep in mind that in Marx's day, we didn't have the 150 years of history behind us that we do now, right?
Right.
So on Marx's deathbed, he was saying, "Stop twisting my ideas." Now what we say is, right? And now what we say is, they're more radical because the twisting of Marx's ideas are the further crazy, the further left, right? Now, Marx was as wrong as you could get most of the time, and yet on the other hand, even he was like, well, no, you don't get to just create something out of nothing. You don't get to magic up an idea where you wave a wand and then suddenly the ideas of reality go away. Marx was, again, as wrong as you get, but was trying to come up with an idea of what amounts to what capitalism would become in a society of no, God damn it, scarcity, right? And this was his premise, is capitalism will at some point create a lack of scarcity for everything.
Common Sense Guy says he said that to others in the Frankfurt School.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
He was not a fan, actually. Amazing. Even Marx.
I mean, basically, what Marx was wanting, I mean, from what I'm understanding, I mean, I'm pretty much a layman on this because I haven't read deep into the history around Marx. I'm not exactly the strongest reader.
Books on tape, my dude. Books on tape.
Yes. I guess that's what I should do more, is just listen to books while I'm driving, like, on the job and so forth. But anyway, as I was saying, I mean, again, I'm a layman's on this, so I made what I'm espousing here might be a kind of a watered-down description of what was happening.
Sure, shoot.
But from what I'm understanding is that Marx was just basically advocating for taking away of some of the wealth of the capitalist. But he wasn't wanting, like, a full-on seizing of everything, like in the same vein that Vladimir Lenin did. Is that correct?
Not really. At least I would say Marx would say no, right? So take any product that is a base commodity, apples, right? So Marx thought that effectively capitalism would make apples so available that the price would sort of become zero, right? And so what you would end up with is one company who was effectively making apples for $0 and selling them for above $0. And so as long as they could get down to 1 cent before anybody else, then you would have a monopoly, and this would create problems or something because they could work other people out of business and all that other kind of thing. And so the reality of the situation is what you would get is a temporary situation where the government would come in and go like, look, okay, apples cost 32 cents. It gives you money to play around with. You know, they cost $0 for you to make, so they cost 32 cents. Or more accurately, the workers of the world would go, okay, an apple should cost 32 cents, and the government would agree with that. But, I mean, he says the people a lot, but the reality is the output of the people is the government in this sense, right? And so this would go on until every product had a cost of $0, and then we'd get communism, right? Because nothing costs anything. It takes nothing to make anything because capitalism has made everything so efficient that the dollar amount is $0. and one to create it and put it on a shelf. And so because of this massive efficiency, everyone could just have whatever they wanted all the time. And so it didn't matter what the wages were. And the reality was we wouldn't need a government anymore because every single thing would be free from the idea of scarcity.
So it kind of sounds to me that Marx wanted capitalism to get to its peak efficiency and supply, and then we switch to socialism.
You got it, right? His premise was that capitalism would get so powerful that at some point, the cost of everything would become zero, and therefore the government should transition us into communism.
Whereas modern day socialists do not think that capitalism will get the worth of everything down to zero and the supply so numerous. They just want socialism now, basically.
Well, so herein was the problem, right? Is that Marx said...
isn't that an accurate summary of that, of modern day socialists?
Not exactly. They make a differentiation that is really weird, and a lot of why Marx didn't like them, right? Because Marx said this just will happen. It's just going to happen. And it was an incredible belief in the free market. On the other hand, every time socialism is tried, what they say is, we have now reached that point, right?
Okay. I also want to address Common Sense Guy. He says, Lenin would want everything. Marx just wanted the mass corporations at the time to take control of.
So Marx's argument was that a major corporation would reduce the cost to zero, and therefore you may as well take control of the major corporation. Right now, it's a public entity as opposed to a private entity because it costs $0. Therefore, there's no competition. Right. Once the dollar cost is zero, then it's now a public thing. The end. Right. And the problem with socialism thus far has been nothing has ever reached the cost of zero, and it never will.
Right.
And we know it never will, based on, well, reality mostly, right? And Marx's idea was the same thing that socialists struggle with currently, which is to say that, like, well, right now everything costs this, and it will just never get any cheaper. And I'm sure everyone who made typewriters thought that exact thing. If you know anyone that has a typewriter, I would be moderately impressed. If you know anyone who uses one, I would be even more impressed. You know, there is simply no way to look at a typewriter and then go, yeah, that's going to turn into a computer. You know?
All right. Also, this whole conversation about Marx, just FYI, it does still tie into the whole subject of political icons, because we're talking about the biggest political icon of the far left, that being Karl Marx.
Yeah, and it sort of ties into a problem that I have with the left, is that even their own icons, they have to lie about, right? Because everybody...
About what Marx's true intents were, for example?
Well, so there's no way to relay what Marx said without saying that capitalism is good and needs to come to full fruition, because that was his base premise. Literally no way to not say that, right? Now, Marx's argument was eventually we would have everything and there would be no new inventions, which is simply false. But
I mean, he was living in the 1800s. What can you expect? Imagination was fairly low back in those days.
Well, even if, I mean, imagination is low now, right? Like, we talk about, like, oh,
right,
there will be good AI soon. Like, okay, what does that actually mean? And the answer is none of us has any idea, right?
Right.
And
I mean, the imagination
all of us know the cyberpunk view of the world is accurate. We're all going to have little tabs on the end of our fingers, and we'll be able to type wherever we are, and little what do they call it? Contact lenses that show us a computer screen, all that kind of crazy shit. But even that wasn't relayed in cyberpunk, right? Because it was, you'll need goggles, you'll need big giant gloves, all this other kind of crap. And so the idea of what we could actually create is never ending. And the premise of Marxism is that there will be an end. Eventually, we will have created everything, All of those things will cost zero. And at that point, what we need to do is have the government go, okay, nothing has a cost anymore. Stop trying to make money. Everyone can have everything perpetually forever. And that will transition into communism with no government, where everyone will just have everything all the time. That's it. The end.
Like, what you're talking about is definitely some next level shit regarding Marxism.
It was Marx's arguments, right?
I mean, I'm just saying, because the base level arguments when it comes to capitalism versus socialism is how socialists translate Marx's ideas nowadays, where it's just a full-on seizing of the means of production. But then you're saying that the belief of Marx was a whole lot more jaded than they omit to be, you know?
Oh, yeah. Well, so Marx
That's
did
why
advocate,
I mean by next level.
Well, Marx did advocate seizing the means of production, but he advocated it effectively at a point where there was no need to have a means of production anymore.
Well, socialists want it now. Marx is all like, we'll wait.
Exactly. Marx was actually an economist, right? And that's a thing that is completely lost, because if you talk about Marx's economic policies, a lot of the things he advocated were to, help capitalism get to the end goal of capitalism so that we could hurry on to fucking socialism. And it's simply not a thing that's addressed, because if you ever say, well, maybe capitalism isn't done, then the answer is Marxism is wrong and socialism is terrible and we shouldn't be doing it right now, but maybe we'll get to it tomorrow.
All right. So, I hope you don't mind if we weave on to different political icons, because we spend a healthy amount of time talking about Marx specifically.
We really did.
Yeah.
And that will lead me to my next very negative, and I know it's very obvious kind of person that I don't like, and that person currently, this space is held by Cenk Uygur.
Oh, of course.
Well,
I mean,
so,
compare Cenk Uygur to Kyle Kulinski, though.
And this is why it's Cenk, right? Because Kyle, as much as a failure as he is at everything, and I do mean everything, other than creating his YouTube channel.
Even then, it's still a slow growth that he's having.
Well, he's beating the fuck out of both of us, so don't talk about it.
Okay, fair enough.
Anyway, but other than the creation of his YouTube channel, right? Equally a failure. But this is the problem with Cenk, right? Is that Cenk openly lies, and it's pretty clear, right? And he this is why this position is so fungible, and why I say it's currently Cenk, because he does it more than most. And you could equally switch in Don Lemon if you wanted to, or Anderson Cooper, both of whom do the same things, right? It's, I will look at a story and I will intentionally cut out what I don't like to make the people I do like look good. And so it may be more accurate to say that this
Or they'll just read the first 1 to 2 descriptions of an article, when later down in the article it gets into more detail going completely against their narrative. Like, there was something I think about, what the heck is David Clark, I think, is that the black sheriff's name?
Yeah.
Sheriff David Clark, yeah. I mean, there's something about the guy, I cannot even remember the story. It was about they're trying to spin it to, like, smear David Clark, basically, when,
give me, like, free facts.
Basically an inmate, died under his watch or something.
Yeah.
And they made it look like, off of the first 2 paragraphs, to make it look like it was intentional. And then I see some video, actually, this is where I mainly saw the video, was through somebody responding to them. And the guy responding to them read the article himself and read that later down in the article, it says that that they actually did try to help to a certain extent, David Clark and his deputies and whatnot. But,
well, that's the thing, right? So it's not so much whether or not they read the first two paragraphs, because sometimes what they do is read the last two paragraphs or the middle two paragraphs or some other two paragraphs that are separated.
Yeah, just in general, they'll pick out whatever two paragraphs most help their article. I mean, I make these little tidbit strike forces that I like to call strike force editorials, where I'll just like provide little tidbits of information, but I don't go showing the entire article. You know, I just show the highlighted paragraphs, but I try to make sure that I do not
at least capture the themes.
Yes, at least capture the themes, but I try to at least make sure that I am not missing any details mentioned in the article that completely goes against what I'm trying to show, what I'm trying to teach.
No, I get it, man. I'm pretty sure you've watched at least a couple episodes of the Plebs. And the reality is what we do is we try and cover all the main factual points and then talk about it for a little while, right? And okay, sometimes we fail, but generally speaking, I think we do a pretty good job. And this is the problem, right? There are facts that don't comport with my idea of reality, right? Don't comport with what I would like to see. And it's relevant.
I'm going to show you an example of one of my Strike Force editorials, by the way.
Sure.
I'm just sending you the link. It's about Brett Kavanaugh. Where are you? There you are in my DMs. Yeah, about his support of NSA spying. I'm just showing mainly the highlights of the Washington Examiner article talking about Kavanaugh's support of NSA spying, and go talk. And I also feature even the paragraphs that say that almost give an article that leans towards that. Hey, his position on NSA spying is not as black and white, full for it as possible. But then I still trying to like rebut that with other parts of the other paragraphs of the article. But
sure,
yeah.
Well, I tell you what,
it'll make more sense once you watch the actual video itself. But anyway, sorry.
I'm gonna go watch this and mute myself for a minute. Introduce Loudmouth and do some talking.
Hey, Loudmouth, how are you? You sound like you're outdoors.
I just saw the new Halloween.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
Oh, cool. Oh, so that was why that you had to leave the stream. I see.
Correct.
Okay. It was kind of abrupt for a second there. But anyway, so we're talking about political icons here. And Two Plebs was just talking about of how much he dislikes Cenk Uygur.
Oh, who would possibly dislike Cenk Uygur?
I don't know. Probably.
He's such an upstanding fellow. Right?
Oh, yeah. Always tells the truth.
Right.
Always tells the truth. Like that Russia conspiracy, it's all so true. Yeah.
Yes, and I like how he has a totally unbiased perspective.
Oh, yes.
Yes. There's no greater model of integrity in the entire internet than Cenk fucking Uygur. We're against Saudi Arabia, you dumbass! We talk about it all the time!
So, what's your general opinion on Kyle Kulinski, though? I don't think I've ever heard you go off on about him, Loudmouth.
Think he's a far leftist. Beyond that, I don't really have much of an opinion of him personally. His politics, I think, are retarded. Beyond that, I don't have much of an opinion of him. Cenk Uygur, more so. I generally think he's a massive dirtbag, both as a person and as from his politics.
Two Plebs actually made the point, and I think I can massively agree with him on this, that Kyle Kulinski at least is not near as much of a liar as Cenk Uygur. Kyle Kulinski,
he's fucking lied numerous times, like really obviously. Like I remember one time when he said he misquoted Sarah Palin was saying
You're breaking up, loudmouth.
that
Quite a
Black
bit.
Lives Matter protest-
Loudmouth, you're breaking
that
up.
Black Lives Matter. Am I still breaking up?
You were, but now you sound fair.
Okay. Yeah, she said. I'm sorry. Cenk Uygur said that Sarah Palin said that Black Lives Matter activists weren't people. In reality, she said they weren't peaceful.
Right. I mean, that's the biggest one. That's kind of a low-hanging fruit there.
Right, but I mean,
It's so low is rotten.
how did he screw that up like that? He's an absolute embarrassment.
Oh god, he must have been high on methamphetamines or something.
I don't know, but shows his total lack of intellectual integrity.
I mean, with how ugly he's becoming in recent months, I would not put it past him that he's on meth. No, I'm just joking, but yeah.
Right.
See you later, common sense guy. Yeah, he says in the chat that he has to go. Yeah. Actually, common sense guy, he mentioned a little bit earlier in the chat. I don't agree with Amazing Atheist, but I'd say he's a good political person.
Oh, yeah. TJ Kirk, he's a smart guy.
I mean, TJ Kirk,
kind of a prick sometimes, but he's a smart guy. Yeah.
I mean, I massively disagree with him on a lot of what he says, but he at least in a majority of what he says, he isn't so overly smug about it, which I guess is one of the main things that I dislike Cenk Uygur and especially Kyle Kulinski on, well, dislike them both on, is their utter insufferable smugness. Kyle Kulinski, oh god, and it just the fake laughter as well. I mean, I've heard some clips of where Kyle Kulinski has some of the fakest laugh ever. He's trying to like force it out. It's really trying too hard. And the overly obnoxious, I mean, I guess Cenk Uygur is actually worse at this. This over-exaggerated, obnoxious man-child gestures and, you know, of how he would be swinging his arms around and just acting like a total spaz. Doing his own impersonations of, say, Alex Jones, for example, or something or other. Right. And it just he looks like a total embarrassment right there. Like, actually no, it was 1791L. Actually no, 1791L and Hard Bastard made videos talking about how Cenk Uygur was criticizing one of his own employees. I think Michael Tracy is his name. I cannot remember. That might be it. But the TYT, they have this sub channel called TYT Politics, where the head guy is some Michael character who is more accurate on the story stories regarding Russia. Like, denies the conspiracy, thinks it's full of shit, but Cenk Uygur obviously thinks that the Russia conspiracies, the Russia-Trump collusion, is truthful, and Cenk Uygur just man-childishly mocks him for it, mocks his own employee for supposedly denying the Trump-Russia collusion.
Oh God, that's Cenk.
Oh yeah. I remember that actually there was this one video that was posted quite a while ago. It was basically, I guess, a review of Cenk Uygur's debate or interview, whatever he had with Sam Harris. And in the thumbnail, somebody put like Fred Flintstone over Cenk Uygur. And
who did that? I forget.
I don't know. Let me see.
I hope it wasn't who I think it is.
No, I don't think it was AIU. Cenk Uygur versus Sam Harris. Trying to find it. It's been a while since I saw it, so who knows? Maybe it was taken down or something. Right. Yeah, I'm not quite seeing it. I'm seeing a whole bunch of other response videos to both Cenk Uygur and Kyle Kulinski, for that matter. I'm not seeing. Oh god.
Yeah, I've done a couple, but and I'm sure, and lots of other people have too. So
I'm looking at a video from the Progressive Voice called Kyle Kulinski eviscerates Sam Harris. Like, what the fuck? I mean, I don't get all this infighting. Like, do you massively disagree with Sam Harris that much to the point that you absolutely hate him?
Since Sam Harris is definitely center left is the main thing. Definitely.
I mean, maybe he's not far left leaning enough. Oh, I found it. Oh.
Because he's anti-Islam, okay? And the Young Turks, one of the most disgusting things they do is their constant defenses of Islam.
Okay, so
Allahu Akbar.
Yes.
Oh, you're still on.
Atheists who defend.
Sorry, go on, loudmouth.
I said an atheist who defends Islam is like a black guy who joins the Ku Klux Klan.
Okay, so the one video of Fred Flintstone being pasted over Cenk Uygur in the thumbnail, that was atheism is unstoppable.
I knew it. Dude, don't bring up that guy.
Sorry.
Jesus Christ, man.
Where? Just joking.
No good can come of that.
Yeah, of course, especially when on a stream with loudmouth reviews.
Yes, but but
I mean, speaking of political icons, yeah, AIU is a real dirtbag.
Yeah, but I mean,
yes, he is.
A lot of the stuff on Young Turks, but still, yeah.
Well, it's hard to be wrong on Young Turks things unless you agree with them.
Right. That is very true. Yes. Yeah.
So,
just rather not talk about that motherfucker.
Yeah. So, what do you think of the Amazing Atheist yourself, two plebs?
The Amazing Atheist is what amounts to a basic bitch leftist.
Basic bitch leftist. Well, at least he's not completely insufferable like Cenk or even Kyle.
I find him generally insufferable, though he is definitely insufferable in different ways. The Amazing Atheist I find irritating. The Young Turks I find toxic and terrible.
Right.
I mean, TJ Kirk is pretty like an anti-feminist and definitely a critic of Islam. So he's nowhere near in the ballpark of the Young Turks bullshit.
Right.
Like I said, basic bitch.
Right.
Basic bitch leftist, but at least he stays true to those principles more so than the TYT crowd.
Yeah, the idea that I never understood why people on the left will jump to the defense of Islam. Because Islam is about as regressive an ideology as exists on this planet.
Let's see.
It's where the primary term regressive left comes from.
Yeah.
They're defending essentially regressive ideas from the left, which doesn't make much sense, but it's the case.
Well, that is the left, right? I mean, it's not an accident that the left likes Islam. Islam, the left does what it always does. It looks at Islam and it says, oh, there's lots of veneration of women. And then it just conveniently ignores that you can beat them with, a 3/4 inch dowel because reasons.
So, you know what the subject topic is, right, Loudmouth?
Political icons, you said, right?
Oh, right. Yeah. What are some political icons that you would say that you do like, actually, and that have kind of inspired you to become the current person you are as far as beliefs go?
Well, in terms of like on YouTube YouTube icons, my favorite YouTube channel is definitely Teal Deer.
Right.
Well, mostly I've always said so because I adore the methodical research of that guy and the way he presents it. But other guys,
damn,
really
but his internet cut out or something?
I don't know.
Sorry,
But-
2 pubs left. Go on.
Yeah, it was. And I've had Logic on my channel. I've always been a big fan of him. I've always loved his critical thinking skills.
Oh yeah. But well, I'm not just talking about people on YouTube. Like it could be anybody, even particularly outside of YouTube.
Okay, I guess
Philosophers, radio show hosts.
Thomas Sowell was a big influential thinker on me. For libertarian thought.
I like Thomas Sowell whenever I listen to him, although I haven't like read deep into his literature. I really ought to.
Sam Harris, even though I don't agree with all of his politics, he actually was very influential in my giving up of religion. Some of his writings.
I think when it comes to atheists, somebody who I respect a little bit more than Sam Harris would be Christopher Hitchens.
Hitchens, yeah, there was a brilliant son of a bitch. Been dead for a while, but yeah, that guy, sharp as a tack, kind of a prick at times, but without a doubt, extremely brilliant. Like, he's not someone I would ever want to go up and debate. All right. If he were alive, I would say, you know what, Hitch, yeah, I'll concede whatever point you make. You could argue the earth is flat, and I'd still say, you know what, I'll concede.
Capitalism is evil. I expected you like a response from you, or one way or the other. Blabmouth. Like, well, what if he said capitalism is evil?
I'd say, well, I don't want to go up against Christopher Hitchens, is what I would say.
Under that circumstance, I would happily go up against Hitchens. Look, we venerate these people, and I think Hitchens did a lot wrong.
Yeah, brilliant.
And
I would argue that point well against Owen McDonald, but not against Christopher Hitchens. Okay, I guess the fact that I could beat Owen McDonald in a debate does not mean I could beat Christopher Hitchens in one.
Yeah, Owen is he's infuriating. Is the main reason why I don't want to like touch on him.
Well,
but
I didn't like I never got angry in the debate with him. I was always very calm and methodical. That's probably why I'm told I came out on top.
Okay. So getting angry in debates is always the way to lose. I don't know how else to say this.
Absolutely the way to lose.
You can
I've lost debates
angry
because I've lost my cool. Even though I was totally in the right on something, losing your cool will just come back to bite you in the ass. It will. And I can be a hothead sometimes. I'm an artist, but that's how it is.
I wouldn't. If I was to ever debate him, I would not be outwardly infuriated or something. I mean, unless he decided to like avoid answering a question, then I would get maybe a little bit more outwardly frustrated.
Then again, I think I put Ham in his place on Israel one time. It was obvious the guy just had no counterpoints.
Yeah.
So I just said, Ham, you're a dumbass.
Maybe you and him can have a full debate on Israel, and I can moderate that.
I don't know.
Can I, in a totally unrelated to stream idea, hand over some debate tactics?
Okay.
If you are well educated on Israel and he's not, literally never let it go.
Right. I asked. He seemed to have no clue that Hamas was firing rockets into Israel. And when I pointed out, he points out civilian casualties. I pointed out the fact that Hamas was putting these rockets in civilian areas, making civilian casualties unavoidable. And I'm like, so Israel's supposed to leave them alone and let rockets be fired into their cities? He had no answer for that. All right, and that I think is where he was destroyed.
Well, I think they just have their heartstrings pulled a little bit to the collateral damage done with. So as far as civilian casualties go amongst the Palestinians.
Yeah. Hold on here, because that's the moment you want to capitalize on, right? Like, I absolutely hate this ponage culture bullshit, but it is where we live, right?
It is, yeah.
And so if you get him to start being wiggly and squirmy, and he's like, yeah, man, like, but like the Israel Hamas situation is like very complicated. Be like, how's it complicated? Hamas fires rockets at Israel, and Israel strikes back.
Pretty much, that's the situation.
Like, well, but like it's more complicated than that. Tell me right now how it's more complicated than that.
And
Tell
it's
me
weird
what
that
the
him-
complication is.
And again, it's weird that him, since he's gay, would be defending the religious fanatics in the West Bank, because they are far, 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 far more homophobic than the Israelis.
You know, I thought Boomer did a lot worse trying to debate you.
Boomer?
A cultural boomerist and some random geek.
Oh.
I mean, the one thing that was particularly... I think the one point that you particularly got them on was that they were denying that the Palestinians were extremists in their beliefs, but then you go pointing out about 80%, over 80% of them support the killing of gays and support the killing of anybody who denies Islam. And they had no response at that point. Like,
well, it was the death penalty for apostasy is what it was, rather than someone just who denies Islam. It's a very common belief in the Muslim world. One, the majority of the world's Muslims seem to believe, as many Pew Research data is to be believed.
I see. It's a little bit more nuanced than the way I put it.
Yes, if somebody leaves the Islamic religion, becomes a Christian, becomes an atheist, they should be put to death. And this comes directly from the Hadith. The Prophet Muhammad gave...
Yes, the apostasy laws are very clear.
There were 3 conditions where it's okay for a Muslim to kill another Muslim. 1 is if he commits murder. 2 is if he commits some kind of sexual offense, such as adultery or rape. And the 3rd, apostasy. Apostasy in Islam is punishable by death.
Yep. Period. The end.
I got a question. Like, what do you two think of Mark Levin? Well, okay, I've already asked you that before, Loudmouth. I just remembered.
Yeah, well, the whole thing, he's better than Hannity, because Hannity pretty much is a porn show now.
Better than Hannity and Rush. Yeah.
All he does is basically suck Trump's dick for an hour.
Yeah.
I enjoy Levin's constitutional discussions.
Yes.
Everything else, I don't care. Honestly, that's that.
Not that I don't have disagreements with Levin, but
well, look, even his constitutional discussions, whether or not I agree with him is pretty irrelevant. I enjoy them; they're good, right? He likes to make arguments based on court precedent a lot, which I think defies the idea of constitutionalism. But generally speaking, I enjoy the idea of his discussions on constitutionalism.
That is his staple, though. You got to keep in mind that the guy is a constitutional lawyer, so of course that would be the thing that he would do best in. I mean, there's some things that I disagree with him on, like particularly him being like uncharitably harsh on Rand Paul, for example, the few times that he's been.
Yeah.
I mean, one day he'll be all like, I don't agree with Rand Paul on everything, but I agree with him on this current subject that we're talking about. Like, say, for example, he agrees with Rand Paul that NSA spying is a bad thing, but then there are other programs where he is like, acts like he's Obama practically.
Well, so that's sort of the problem if you're a constitutional lawyer, right? And I could rightly be accused of being a constitutional purist, and I am. There's no two ways about it, right? The things that were written in that document are correct. The end. And I don't want to hear your arguments about why we don't need a 4th, 5th, 6th, 3rd, 2nd, or 1st Amendment.
Or even 10th Amendment.
We all lost the 10th Amendment argument with the incorporation doctrine. That's it. We just did, right? Because the incorporation doctrine was the idea that the Bill of Rights also applies to states. Now, this is a post-Civil War argument. It's a terrible argument. It's the idea that states also have to follow whatever is in the Bill of Rights. Well, not just the Bill of Rights, but the Constitution in general, though specifically the Bill of Rights, right? And so there is no idea of a laboratory of democracy. That is dead post the incorporation doctrine.
I mean, the 10th Amendment is supposed to give states the power to legislate on anything that is not mentioned in the Constitution. from what I understand. So, of course, the incorporation doctrine would not allow. I don't even think that really you need an incorporation doctrine that as you're explaining to say that states cannot legislate on anything that overrules the Constitution. I mean,
Well,
the 10th
hold
Amendment.
on now. What you're saying, and make no mistake, I'm openly advocating for this. What you're saying is that California can ban guns in their entirety.
What? No. I did not.
Second Amendment.
Say that.
Second Amendment applies to the federal government, not the states. So
No,
if California says we're going to ban guns, then California can ban guns.
No, I said specifically that 10th Amendment, from what I understand of it, gives states the powers to legislate on anything that is not mentioned in the Constitution.
No. The 10th Amendment says any powers not granted to the feds are, in fact, granted to the states. Now, no power is given to the feds to regulate firearms rights. On the other hand, nothing says the states can't regulate based on firearms rights.
All right.
This does, in fact, mean that free speech can be banned in Utah if they so felt like. Guns could be banned in California. You could station localized troops in the homes of everyone in Florida. These things all must be true, but the incorporation doctrine says no.
All right, here's what it says. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution nor prohibited by it to the states are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. So from what I'm understanding, from what I'm understanding of interpreting that amendment is that you cannot just outright ban guns, that California cannot just,
nor those prohibited too, right? So the feds can't say no guns, but California could. That is a power granted to the states by the Constitution, specifically in the 10th Amendment. The idea that California could ban guns in their entirety is 100% constitutional. The incorporation doctrine specifically is what stops that. Now, keep in mind that the founders of the United States said, if California says they want to ban guns, what that means is everyone who loves guns will leave California.
Okay, here's my question. With the way that it stands, would it be legal for a state to say ban a luxury item and it would not be unconstitutional?
Sure.
Like the Constitution doesn't mention video games. Say if my state, Kansas, wanted to ban video games outright.
What would be stopping them? What currently is stopping them for that?
Well, I don't think that the Constitution would be, but say if a state was to outright ban the possession of guns, though, that would be unconstitutional.
Why?
I mean, that's from what I'm understanding. Oh, God. My head hurts. I think we're just having like two different interpretations of the 10th Amendment or something.
Oh, no. There is a reason. There is a SCOTUS decision that is called the incorporation doctrine in retrospect.
Okay, well, I'm talking about currently with the... Okay, I'm just going to give you the benefit of the doubt on the incorporation doctrine. Incorporation doctrine affirms that state powers are not to overrule the constitutional rights of citizens.
That's literally what it says.
Okay.
States cannot supersede the Bill of Rights.
All right. So we're on equal understanding then. And currently, the United States does not mention anything about weed or video games. Say if a state wanted to ban those, it would be constitutional. And it would also be in accordance with the incorporation doctrine. Am I right?
Therein you have two problems, right? So the argument has been from the supremacy clause, which is to say, if the feds say something is the law, therefore it is the law. On the other hand, do feds have the right to create a constitutional problem from nothing? This is the problem. And the answer that we have come to is that any federal agency authorized by Congress is in fact permitted to overrule state laws. That's why the DEA can exist and supersede state legislation. So if Trump tomorrow suddenly decided that all of these states that have legalized weed were wrong, he could close them all down and not have a problem. That's the supremacy clause issue. On the other hand, lacking the incorporation doctrine, constitutionally speaking, no one would be immune from banning guns at a state level.
But we're okay. Where we both agree that states should be able to legislate on weed however they want.
Well, hold on, because chat brings up an interesting point. They cannot ban it because they are the government, and the government shall make no laws bridging those rights. The state cannot override the Bill of Rights. That is only true post the incorporation doctrine, right? Because specifically, the easiest amendment to go to is the first. Congress shall make no law, right? So if California decided everyone to the right of Stalin has no free speech, according to the Constitution, they are correct, right?
But with the incorporation doctrine, they could not do that.
You got it.
But they can still ban weed?
Sure.
Okay, so, with the incorporation doctrine, they cannot ban free speech, but they can still ban weed because that's not mentioned in the Constitution.
You got it. There's not a 11 and a half amendment that says pot's great, right?
Right. I mean, no. I mean, I obviously know that the Constitution doesn't mention anything about weed, video games, or even mentions anything about sexuality and marriage, which is kind of why I think that the SCOTUS ruling of 2015 was a bit of a farce. Now, grant you, I believe completely in decriminalizing, in giving people the liberty to have whatever sexual relations that they want, except for pedophilia. But that is not me trying to conflate pedophiles with the rest of the LGBT community. But
hold on, by the way, because you're paving over a lot of constitutional
point, though.
Oh, I'm sorry, my bad. Carry on.
So in principle, I agree with the 2015 ruling, but in practice and with the way they handled it, not so much. Go on.
Well, so even the idea of pedophilia, right? So we can argue about whether or not that's a power granted to the people by the federal government. And now the federal government can argue whether or not the entire nation is subject to these ideas. But if, again, California, because they're crazy as shit, went, yeah, pedos are great.
Well, I wasn't trying to turn this into a pedophilia discussion.
No,
I was just trying to clarify that I'm not conflating pedophiles with the LGBT.
No,
LGBT
I get your
if
point.
Anybody gets sensitive about that,
I get your point, but herein is the problem: is the idea of the Constitution was to limit the federal government. That's it, right? And we all in a modern day standard to go, well, that means states can't do X. Well, that is the point of the 10th Amendment, is the states can do X. No matter what X is, the states can do it. If we want in California, as we probably do, pedos to openly have sex with 4-year-olds in the street, then fine.
Perish the thought.
Right. Yes. It's almost vomit-inducing. And yet, this was the deal. If California wants to be a progressive shithole, let it. Don't in any way influence the feds. That's it.
Ooh, that was quite a wild side tangent.
The states only have power that is not granted first and covered by the federal government. It's stated in the Constitution. No, that's wrong, right? So this is the thing that specifically all of us gun rights activists like to hang on, and it's just wrong, right? So the idea that a municipality or a state in specific couldn't ban a thing is just wrong, right? while the feds could in no way ban you from having and carrying a gun, your local state and or municipality could. The feds were to keep their fucking hands off and let people have guns. And so if California decided that you could not keep and carry a gun, then fine, California was a progressive shithole, and hypothetically, people would move. This would be the laboratory of democracy. It would tell us that despite that the feds could not influence such a decision, individual states could. And this would permit them to say, no guns here, no free speech there. And people would go, these ideas are terrible, and they would leave. And this is a thing that we have become comfortable with in the modern era, where we say, well, but Massachusetts had a law not permitting you to carry a gun in town, anywhere in the state, and therefore the founders were okay with it. Like, yeah, that's true, but that predates the incorporation doctrine. And so the idea that you couldn't carry a gun in town is a horrific idea to apply to the country because the Second Amendment didn't apply to it. I think y'all are confusing the Constitution with the Bill of Rights. It clearly states in the Constitution which is the law of the land, is that all legislative powers here and granted shall be vested in.
I think she's trying to write a second paragraph, but yeah,
probably.
I mean, we got into this long legal and constitutional discussion. Okay, shall be vested in a Congress of the United States, which shall consist of a Senate and House of Representatives. Right there, the Constitution gave all legal power to the federal government.
No, it did not. Right? Inherently, the Constitution gave power to the states that was not available to the federal government. Right? This was equally why the Senate was to be elected by the states, because states could argue their point of view as a state. Federal government, no, the Constitution actually gave the federal government too much power. That I presume is why a lot of people were upset that it was signed, because they wanted, I believe, the Articles of Confederacy. Be that as it may, whether or not people on average wanted X, Y, or Z, the reality is we got what we got, and that's how it works. And so now we're in whatever situation that was agreed upon to be in. Now, you can argue that at the time of the adoption of the Constitution, the Articles of Confederacy were more popular, but I would challenge you to provide some polling data to say so, as opposed to, I just think so. And the problem is, I've never seen any polling data. I just hear a lot of, I think so. Because, let's face it, in a lot of ways, the Constitution has provided us a lot of problems via the Supreme Court, who was not an arbiter of the Constitution for about the past 200 years. They just did whatever the fuck they wanted. Well, all right. To be fair, past 100 years. Though, at the start of the incorporation doctrine, right? I mean, look, here's the deal. You were not guaranteed freedom of speech in your state. You were not guaranteed that a state would not have a state-sponsored religion. And we know that factually, because Pennsylvania had a state-sponsored religion at the time of the adoption of the Constitution and for 50 years after.
Right, I thought I remembered hearing that. Anyway, we got into this long constitutional and legal discussion mainly because we got mentioning up Mark Levin and how his staple is basically constitutional law. But I got a question out of curiosity. You say that you don't like to hear what else he has to say about other issues not pertaining to constitutional law and history. What's up with that, and what specific issues would that be?
So, Levin is great on constitutional history. he makes a lot of the same arguments I just made. In fact, it'd be fair to say I've gotten some of them from him. You know, he goes a lot into like constitutional originalism, and good for him, right? On the other hand, he occasionally drifts into, this is not a constitutional issue, so fuck you. This is what I want. It's not so much what's right. This is what I want. And when you start getting into what Levin wants versus what is historical fact, you start having a problem, right? And for example, if I said to you, I want no state to be able to ban guns, I mean, that's true. That's what I want. Does that make it constitutional? Does that make it the reality of our lives? No, it doesn't, right? And so I can tell you what I want forever. On the other hand, Levin, like so many other people, says, well, this is what I want, therefore this is either A, how it is, or how it should be. And he conflates those points. And it's not a problem of him, it's a problem of media in general, you know?
What is it of that he wants that you disagree with?
He comes to a lot of social conservative ideas, right?
So basically when he ties an issue into religion.
Often, yes. In fact, if he makes a tie to religion, you can just assume that we're out of facts and we're more into what Levin would like. Now, look, don't get me wrong. I may or may not agree in any individual circumstance with what he wants. But the question then becomes, is that reality? And the answer is often no.
All right.
Hey, give me 2 seconds. I'm going to mute myself, take a piss. I'll be right back.
All right. I'm thinking of closing up this stream pretty soon anyways. For everybody who is watching. These headphones are really starting to press into my ears real bad. Press the sunglasses into my skull. The hardship of trying to be an edgelord. Okay. Sorry, just looking at some of the chats here. Some of my YouTube chat or Twitter chat groups, anyways. Actually, there's this one message from Rin that I want to read. Sorry, everybody, we're in the midst of a break as I'm here all alone and Two Plebs is making a rest stop.
Sorry, even I have to pee.
Okay.
Well, hey, man. I don't know. In the world of, I have said one more political icon should be forthcoming. I know I sort of spoiled it with Marx for an ending line. I have one that I'm pretty certain is at least marginally controversial. So maybe we should have capped on that, and luckily we will anyhow. Dave Rubin. I do not like Dave Rubin.
You don't like Dave Rubin?
No. Well, so...
I don't really either. I mean, he seems kind of a substance overall.
Well, does he, though? And I'd like you to go through Dave's various episodes, right?
He doesn't speak as well or as passionately for any a political principle. He sets himself up as more of a platform for other people to talk on.
Well,
occasionally he'll have like these face-to-face videos where it's like 5 to 10 minutes of him talking on an individual subject, but they're pretty milk toast overall, I'd say.
Well, hold on. I can forgive all of that, right? I can forgive the, look, I'm an interviewer. It's not necessarily my job to advocate a position. What I do is interview people. I mean, look, to some degree or another, I approve of that, right? If I want somebody interviewed, I don't want the person interviewing them to be like, have you considered that capitalism is better than anything? Go fuck yourself if you don't think so. Answer this.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't mind the interviews. It's just he does nothing but is the thing.
Well, and that I can forgive, right? Because that's his shtick. He interviews, right? He's not an advocate for things necessarily.
I can't say that I outright dislike him, though. Just to clarify, it's just I'm of the opinion of I don't care. I don't really care about the guy as a political pundit.
Well, so here's why I dislike Dave. I like lots of his guests. I do, to some degree, like his interview style. He does the thing that he does decently well. Now, that sounds like a lot of compliments for me to dislike him. However, Dave is the guy who talks about talking about ideas. He doesn't talk about ideas. He talks about talking about ideas, right? Like, it would be super great if people talked about ideas. That's all I'm saying. It would be amazing if people talked about ideas. Like, okay, Dave, go ahead and do it. Well, I mean, let's find some people who are going to talk about ideas. Then he goes and talks to people like Brett Weinstein, who don't actually talk about ideas. They just deflect on the idea of ideas. They're like, well, I mean, we should find enlightened alt-centerism. And I'm like, yeah, that's not a thing. Stop it. And then he goes and don't get me wrong, his interview with Larry Elder. Larry Elder, hardcore, backhanded him with ideas. Conservatism is good. This is why. No, fuck you. Right? But his likability in that sense is dependent on the interviewer. Now, I think I've already laid out decently well that I would be happy to listen to socialist ideas explained in some full force sense.
Yeah.
I would be happy to listen to Brett Weinstein talk about his ideas, but that's not what he does. He talks about talking about ideas. Well, we should be talking about ideas. It would be great if there was lots of free speech. It would be wonderful if we had a diversity of ideas. This idea of talking about ideas is a problem. It's so superficial.
It's counterproductive.
Fucking painful, right? Like, okay, maybe we should talk about ideas. Are you ever going to do that?
Actually, it's not necessarily even counterproductive. It's just flat out unproductive, non-productive.
Well, so that's the problem, right? Is that it would have been unproductive unto itself, right? The idea that we're going to talk about talking about ideas. That would be unproductive if we hadn't somehow seized on the idea that the availability to talk about ideas is more important than the ideas. And that's what Dave does. Is he goes, well, people should be able to talk about all the ideas. And I'm like, well, but they do, right? You don't want to hear it. That's the reality, right? Because when you hear it, someone like Larry Elder shows up and goes, smack. No, shut up. You are ridiculously uneducated. You have no idea what you're talking about.
Speaking of political icons, though, what is your opinion on Larry Elder? I mean, I don't know a whole lot about the guy.
So I like Elder. I don't think he's the icon of our era.
Obviously.
I don't think he's as much as he's made out to be most of the time, right? But he's good, and don't let me dissuade the idea of him being great. Even He's a great guy. He's above the mark. He's above the lower limit of being great. On the other hand, do I think he's the Frederick Douglass of our times? No. Right. And in the same way that I ever think I will be. Because I show up and I say, X is a thing. And I get an unlimited amount of argument about whether or not X is a thing.
You're basically just an average Joe is what you are.
Right. But the ability to point out the obvious has become a big deal, right? Larry Elder goes, well, these are the stats. And that doesn't mean victimology. That's his shtick. And it's a good shtick. I enjoy it. I like it. On the other hand, pointing out the obvious is not forging the way. You know?
Right.
It's a big difference. And it's the difference between the good or even the moderately great from the truly great. Right?
By the way, I think we're going to end this stream here pretty soon. It's 8:05 here in the Midwest. I know it's only like 6 in California there.
That is true.
And the day probably still feels young in this. So does the stream probably too. But I've been streaming for I think
you're on 3 hours, man.
On 3 hours, damn. Yeah, I haven't even ate dinner yet, and I have to take a leak myself, honestly.
Well, hey, man, we normally drink and bullshit without much topic on the channel on Friday evenings. So I'll tell you what, let's bring this guy to a close. You get some food, you make various bathroom trips, and shoot me a DM when you're done, and maybe we'll run an evening stream of just drinking and hanging out in BS.
You talking about like what, next Friday or something?
Over on my channel in anywhere between 2 to 4 hours. Whatever it gives you the amount of time to do your thing. If you're going to bed an hour and a half, then never mind, ignore me.
Oh, so what? You want to like continue streaming after I've went off air? Like,
you got it. I'll tell you what. You and I will arrange this after you cancel this. Everybody, thanks for watching. I am Don of the Two Plebs channel of Two Plebs Talk News. You can find us at youtube.com/2plebs. I am also available at 2_plebs on Twitter. The Dark Conservatarian has been an amazing host. He is a wonderful gentleman, and you all should subscribe to him as often as possible if you haven't. Create a second Google account just so you can subscribe to him twice, because he is, in fact, a good guy. But other than that, have a good evening.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, there's some other things that I also like to do in my day. I don't like to spend all my days in the week streaming, just FYI.
No worries, brother. Close her out.
We'll talk more in Twitter DMs, but yes. What a lot that we have talked about, especially ever since Two Plebs has joined here. I mean, he has been a pretty thought-provoking and substantive guest on this channel, and I would like to give a big thanks and shout-out to My 2 Cents for joining a lot earlier. One of the bigger channels that I have had on this channel. Up there with, well, Loudmouth is pretty much of a regular. He's over 2,000, but not as big as Bearing, not as big as White YouTuber, but still, My 2 Cents, pretty big.
Also, relevantly, not as big as PewDiePie. Fix that.
Oh, God. Yeah, PewDiePie, come on my channel. That'll be the next thing. No. But anyway.
Dark Conservatarian should be the next PewDiePie. Subscribe.
Oh, gee. I'm flattered, Don. But anyway. We have talked about a whole lot of political icons, and hopefully watching this stream, some of you might have a good idea on who you think you should listen to and who you think you should steer clear of now. Steer clear of Cenk Uygur. That's all that I'll say. Listen to more of people like Mark Levin and definitely Thomas Sowell. But yeah. Anyway, so that's all that I have. I am Zach, the Dark Conservatarian. This has been Strike Force number 082. Catch me tomorrow and Sunday afternoon. I am going to be continuing Strike Force on those appropriate days as well. So, see y'all later. God bless.